Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the July 18th Audit and Control Committee meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone this morning. If everyone has had an opportunity to read the minutes from the previous meeting, I'd accept a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
And a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next order of business is privilege of the floor. If anyone wishes to address the committee, please come forward.
Oh, who's this guy?
Good morning, County Executive Wendell. I'd just like to take a moment. Last Friday, I spoke last night at Economic Development. Last Friday, we were made aware that the County of Chautauqua IDA was named the #1 economic development agency in Western New York, surpassing Invest Buffalo Niagara and Erie County IDA to the tune of 3 times as many projects in Chautauqua County as was in Erie County. Right now, when you talk about economic development, everybody refers to Buffalo News, Western New Yorkers, Invest Buffalo Niagara, and the predominance they've had. I think it's a tribute to Mark Geis, the IDA, the Planning and Economic Development team that's here, that they have now surpassed and reached the gold standard. So on behalf of myself, I just want to congratulate that. And we will be getting a press release out, but I'd just like to make that known that they've done a tremendous job in what they have done here in Chautauqua County. Thank you.
They deserve credit, and so do you, PJ.
That's the team. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for sharing. Any other privilege of the floor this morning? Mr. Scudder. You were running for the privilege of the floor. Seeing no one else legitimate, we'll move on to our
Legitimate.
proposed resolutions. First proposed resolution is acceptance of carts 5311 2022 operating assistance and 2022 CRR SAA funding.
Good morning, Tim Carr, Director of Public Facilities.
I'm Brenda Swan, Project Coordinator, CARTS, CHQ Transit.
Can you tell me what the CRR SAA stands for?
Coronavirus Response Act Relief Supplemental Appropriation Act.
Okay. Thank you. I would have never guessed that, or did I know that? So, thank you.
Good answer.
All right, are we ready?
Yep.
All right, so as we have finally received our contract from New York State DOT, I'm here to get permission for this grant to be accepted and for the county executive to sign it. So the first one is our 5311 2022 operating assistance and 2022 CRISA funding. The CRISA funding is 100% federal, and the operating assistance would be 50% federal and 50% local match. And this has been included in the 22 budget, has been accrued. Any questions on that?
Questions, comments?
Questions?
Folks, and this is for 2022.
Correct.
Okay. Do you anticipate more funding for the fiscal year 2023?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
next one.
they're coming.
Okay. I should have read that one.
Okay, are we ready?
Any other questions? Everyone in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And proposed resolution number 2 is acceptance of carts 5311 2023 and 2024 operating assistance and 2023 CRR SAA and ARPA funding.
There you go.
Okay, so this is basically the same. The CRISA is federal at 100%, the ARPA is federal at 100%, and the operating assistance, again, is 50% federal, 50% local match. And this has already been adopted in the 2024 budget. Any questions?
Why's the delay? Is it just coming through now, and they're finally getting these things kind of processed through, and
It's New York State.
yeah,
We just get it when they give it to us.
yeah. So they're just finally getting around to doing this, and they did all of it right up to what is owed.
Correct.
So okay.
Okay.
Well, it's nice that we're getting all this money. What are we gonna do with it?
Well, on the next part, I'm gonna tell you what we're doing with, what's coming in 2025. She's used this for, operating and different, stuff like that currently. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, questions on this resolution?
Same problem. Brenda, so this is just it's a pass-through. It's federal funds, they come to the state, and then from the state, it comes down to us.
Correct.
Okay.
Anything else?
I'm all set then.
Yeah. It's been since 2022. You don't really remember what you budgeted for these amounts. And
Right.
did the grant come back more favorable or less favorable?
I
you
think
know.
it came back what she expected, and
Okay.
like, we get buses, our buses, we keep for 150,000 miles in 5 years, and like currently, most of our buses have over 200,000. So
Yeah.
as you'll see in the next one, we're gonna be, getting 13 new buses. We just keep rotating them out.
And sometimes I don't ask the question what you're doing with the money because it was already in the budget and it was probably already spent towards something. The budget had balanced then, and for a reason. So, any other questions on this resolution? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next resolution number 4 is amend 2024 budget for various departments.
Okay, so this is the 5311.
Well,
Did I skip one?
Yeah.
I
you
thought
skipped
maybe.
number 3.
Yeah, sorry. Acceptance of carts
okay.
5311 2023 consolidated grants. Just trying to confuse
See if
you.
we're awake yet. So yes, this is the 5311 2023 consolidated, and so this is broke down in that we're going to get computer equipment, which is 2 laptops that we're gonna get for our office. Replacement tablets, all of the drivers have tablets in their bus that gives them their schedule, everything they need to know, everything we need to know for billing purposes. So every couple of years, these tablets wear out and we need to replace them. Purchase of 13 replacement buses, and then radios. So we just last year, or in the last 2 years, have received 3 trolleys. So we had replacement radios for that, and we put them in the trolleys. So now we're going to get some more replacement radios, because in this, Chautauqua County will only pay 10% of it. So it's cheaper than if we were to have to buy out, a whole radio ourselves out of our budget. It also includes the 2023 mobility management support vehicle, and that is our driver trainer needs a vehicle. He's out, watching the drivers and making sure everyone's doing what they should be doing, and
Supervision.
correct.
Safety.
Yep. And then a new other equipment is that we do want to purchase cameras for the buses that would be inside and out, and that's for the safety of our drivers and for the people around them. We can see what's going on. If there was an incident, we can see what happened. So that's what we want to do with that.
So that, again, I think Brenda said, but this is 80% federal, 10% local, and 10% state funded,
Correct.
okay? And the mobility manager, we're 10% of that, but we don't actually pay anything out of that. We have that in-kind services. They use our offices, she uses our computers and stuff like that, so there's really no money that we pay. 10% for the mobility manager also.
Correct.
It's in kind.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay.
How much of this was in the budget for this year, or these have these been piling
all-
up for?
These will all be in for capital.
Okay.
The computer is in the 2025 budget.
Okay, so you're just moving them forward a little bit? Good. The buses were, you have 13 replacement, on track, ahead of schedule, behind schedule?
I would say we're a little behind schedule, because of, what's happened in the last several years.
No.
So, like I said, a lot of our buses are at 200,000 now, and when we actually do this contract and get them, it's probably gonna be at least a year and a half before we actually see these buses.
Okay.
So, is it correct to divide some of these numbers by 13 to get a per bus cost? So our cameras are $15,000 a bus?
Well,
We have 35
buses
buses.
total.
Correct.
All right, so this is for cameras for the old buses and the new buses?
Correct, yes. Yes, because we don't have any at this time, so we're gonna put them in all of the buses. Correct.
Do we have a traded value for 13 old buses, or are we keeping them?
We,
It varies. It's minimal. I mean, it was, anywhere between $200 to $1,500. We usually send it to the Auctions International, and some we even keep some of them to use for parts or to replace on our other buses. But it's not really lucrative.
All right.
Are the cameras removable, say, if you, put them from one bus to another? I mean, as long as they're still in
I
good
would think
shape?
so, yeah.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's
right,
Yeah, we would.
some of that stuff could be
Yeah.
transferable, I suppose, but
Right.
if it's old and it's not worth the hassle, but,
Yeah, I'm sure we could go from bus to bus.
correct.
any other questions, comments? How's ridership been since this year in our projected revenues? Are we meeting our goals?
Michelle Westfall is not here. She would have the actual numbers, but we're not where we were pre-COVID, but we're increasing each year. We're getting there slowly.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Now we can get to this next resolution.
Yeah.
Is the amend 2024 budget for various departments.
Good morning. Jen Swan, Budget Director. This amendment does two things. It takes money out of the ARPA fund and shifts it to the appropriate capital projects for availability to get those projects finished. The second part of that is really just a compliance piece with state reporting requirements. So we're just changing the accounts for how the interest on certain debt instruments is reported.
Questions, comments?
Housekeeping.
Yep. Sounds good. Everyone in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next proposed resolution is setting salary for EMS education coordinator.
Morning, Noel Gutman, Director of Emergency Services.
Tim Carlson, Senior Paramedic, County EMS.
So this position is, was funded in our current budget. We're looking to set the salary range for it. So this position is very, very critical to our operation. Currently, we have approximately 300 EMTs and paramedics in the county that rely on our CME. CME is a continuing medical education program. That's how the EMTs maintain their certifications and be able to continue providing service. So this person will be, that will be the main focal point of their job. Will be coordinating that CME program, also working with our EMT program, all of our ancillary courses, what we call ACLS, PALS, CPR. Those are all the other courses the state requires that our EMTs and medics have in order to maintain their certification. Tim, what else?
Historically, we had a part-time person that was filling in interim to do just the CME portion. We also had some supplemental assistance from some contractual folks. Right now, we have a person that we're utilizing from Cat County as a paramedic level certified instructor coordinator that can endorse paramedic level recertifications until we have this settled. Prior to that, at the very beginning, we did have a full-time position that handled the CME program, our training and education. That position was eliminated in the past, just after COVID. And I think there was a bit of a missight, into the future with eliminating that position. And I think there was a little bit of a tendency to pluck that low-hanging fruit where the role of the person in the position was equated to the importance of the position. So we need that position. Right now, we've had a group of people that are doing little bits and pieces of it, but it isn't very fluid, and it's not user-friendly to the end user.
And the person that was doing it part-time, their certification had lapsed and they moved out of state. So that part-time position person is no longer around, and that part-time position would not be filled. So, I said, this is critical position to approximately 300 EMTs and paramedics in our county. That's not, obviously not just our agency, that's spread out among the 42 fire departments in the county.
Will this person be will they be certified to be able to teach some of these courses also?
Yes.
Yep.
So that's part of their job purview, is to be able to be the instructor.
They have to have what's called a CIC, a course instructor coordinator. To have that certification from the state, they'll be an active paramedic.
Mm-hmm.
So,
In the job description, we put in that this person will be doing training and education. We'll utilize them. There's state regulations that we have to constantly do quality assurance and then quality improvement. So we have to identify areas where we are not doing well, and then we have to develop plans to correct that and provide education. This person's going to help with that. In their job description, we've put in there that they have to at least do one shift on an emergency services vehicle, an ambulance or a fly car in the county, to stay current and to have a better understanding
So-
of.
At the end of the day, you said it'll help the end user, which is important. If the end user is frustrated at a process that it's hard to be and stay recertified and have your classes, they're going to say, the heck with it, I'm not doing it.
Years ago,
So-
most EMTs would, every 3 years, would sit through a class again, take another test.
Refresher class.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
They've
I've
gone
been
to the CME program has gone to it's adult-based learning where you sit in front of a computer, you do classes, you do online tests for it, but you also can get credit for going to conferences and trainings, and if your fire department does a drill with a little bit of pre-planning and getting it approved, all those things can be put into the CME program, so it's not just 100% sitting in front of a computer. It's didactic learning, hands-on learning, conferences, training, online learning. And this position will be responsible for verifying those meet the standards, putting them into the computer, and checking the status of each of those approximately 300 people to make sure they're on track for getting it done.
Noel and Tim, so in addition to their administrative responsibilities, they'll also be instructor trainer.
Instructor, trainer, and they will still be an active paramedic in the field as well.
Okay.
We've made sure that anybody who's there. So right now, there's only 3 of us that are technically mid-management supervisory staff for the whole county EMS operation. And
You're one of them, Tim?
yes,
All right.
1.5,
a half, or maybe 3/4. I don't know. It depends.
Whatever.
But we have days where there are illnesses, or we need to fill a car, an opening, and we fill those openings. So we've always tried to maintain the ability to wear multiple hats at once. It's just that that stack of hats on top of our head is getting awfully tall and tipping over. If you were to ask people, the constituents, users of the CME program in your districts, I'm sure there would be some negative feedback with the way things have been going.
And we want to, one of our biggest problems, not, I would say our problem, a state problem, a national problem is, finding, keeping, recruiting, getting people to join a department and, especially being EMT. Currently, EMT is approximately, let's say 6 months training, paramedic is 18 months. And we want to make it as seamlessly easy for people to maintain those certifications as we can, because those positions are just that important.
Well, that was my point before, is if those end users are dissatisfied, they're gonna say the heck with it and not do it.
Right.
And just not, just be like, it's frustrating at the end of the day if the process is difficult and hard to do and maintain. So I think it's important that the county makes sure that they can do the best that they can. So it sounds like they are.
Yeah, Dan,
Yeah.
one last comment. Guys, last night in public safety, you did mention that human resources was on board.
Correct.
They too agree that this should be a full-time position.
Correct.
Okay.
So looking forward, and there's been a lot of noise about this OSHA emergency response rulemaking.
1910.156 is what you're referring to.
Yeah, open for comment, so a couple of days from now.
Yep, July 21st.
That it's going to increase the training requirements very substantially, as I understand it. As you're looking at this position, are we going to have to shift gears if that goes through, or how are we handling that?
Exactly how that's going to affect the EMS side of operations, I don't exactly know that answer yet, because the EMS certifications are a state certification. And most likely the OSHA standard will say, they must meet state compliance. But this position will help with that, because one of the things we're gonna do is have, monthly, like a training angle. We're gonna say on next Wednesday, we're gonna do a 2-hour training on XYZ topic and make that open to anybody that wants to show up. And that would be, they could come, might be a lecture, might be hands-on, combination of both. And they would get that CME credit for that, so that this person will either instruct that or help set that up to bring in a subject matter expert to do that.
Okay.
So we have a separate working group within the Fire Advisory Board that also is with our EMS council, and a lot of us are studying this 600-page document, that 1910.126 that you referenced. It will drastically reshape the landscape of the fire service in the entire country, for everybody.
Do we, and you may not be the right person, maybe PG I should ask, but do we as a county have a position that we would submit on before July 22nd on how we feel about the social rulemaking? You're the guy?
Yeah, that'd be me.
Okay,
And several of our fire departments have already done that as well.
sure.
I've done that as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
This could be a whole separate topic, this 156 standard. A lot of it's not bad, because it's just formalizing stuff we're already doing and getting departments to put stuff into written plans and be a little more proactive of saying exactly how they're gonna do things. There are some unreasonable requests in it, I feel. But not all of it's bad, and whenever you codify safety, that's not a bad thing.
No, but often in these things you have, 9 good things and 1 killer that, kills you.
Exactly. There are some very unpleasant aspects of what they're expecting, and we're still a couple years out from the way the OSHA standard. It's a 7-step process. The way the OSHA standard goes into being, I believe we're on step 4, maybe around there with this public access period. And from what I'm hearing at my state level meetings and stuff, is that they expect 80-85% of what's in that bill now to be in the end result. But this open public comment period is very important for anybody that has any vested interest to express their opinion.
Do you think that this position will be able to get filled with is there people with the proper certifications and instruction and stuff?
Yes. And that's one of the reasons we've had to wait. Like I said, this was a funded position in our budget for this year. We had to wait some interested people had to get the proper certifications, and it's taken till just recently for that to happen. So that's why this is coming up now.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, yes.
Next proposed resolution, authorize acceptance of the gun-involved violence elimination give grant funds for 2024 and 2025.
Morning Committee, Madeline Contiguglia for the DA's office. The resolution that we have before you today is to accept the gun-involved violence elimination grant funds. This grant is a grant that we've received for many years. It's a partnership between our office, the Jamestown Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, and the Probation Department. The resolution is to accept Chautauqua County's portion of the grant funds. The total award from New York State was $682,014. Chautauqua County's portion is $420,699. The district attorney's office was awarded $298,584. The sheriff's office was awarded $95,815, and the probation department was awarded $26,300. Jamestown Police Department will be executing their own contract with New York State. The grant that we received this year for 2024 exceeded the district attorney's budget and the sheriff's office 2024 adopted budget, so we would like to amend our budget to include the revenue. It's a budget neutral amendment for both departments. And the probation office did include their portion of the grant funding for 2024, so they do not need an amendment. The amounts that are going to be included in 2025 will be included in our 2025 proposed budgets to you. The term is July 1st of 2024 through June 30th of 2025. And the portion of the funds for the district attorney's office is used to fund the salary of an assistant district attorney and the partial salary of another assistant district attorney that are responsible for prosecuting firearms, narcotics, and violent felonies in Chautauqua County. We are also involved in specialized training and youth engagement and community engagement events as part of the funding. The sheriff's office portion of the funding funds the salary or partial salary of a field information officer. Also includes specialized details and trainings, and as well as community and youth engagement events. And the probation office, their portion funds specialized details for reducing violent crime, firearms, and narcotics in Chautauqua County, as well as training and youth and community engagement events.
You said that there was a overage, but it was budget neutral. Are you just putting more toward
Yes,
those
so
salaries?
we'll be increasing our operating expense, but also increasing our revenue for both departments. We got a significant amount more than we had been in previous years last year. So that was we just finished a cycle, now we're starting a new cycle. So last year we received quite a bit more money than we expected and had in previous years. This year, when we were budgeting, we weren't sure how much we were gonna get, if it was gonna go back to the original amount or if it was gonna stay at this $600,000 amount. So we kind of split the difference and budgeted more conservatively than we could have. So we received an overage. And so we'll be increasing our expenses, but also increasing our revenue.
It's an offset.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and but it's still a little extra money for the department, which
Yes.
I'm sure you are utilizing.
Yes.
Just good.
So,
Fred.
when I see, this is, sorry for my private sector accounting, but employee benefits going up, it looks like they're going up by 31,500, which to me would then reflect a much bigger number in increased salaries that are correlated with that. But is that not the way it works here?
The increase was to include expenses for our anti-violence interns, which are, it's a paid internship that we can offer to law students to assist us in prosecuting violent crime, firearm offenses, and they're working with our GIV-funded ADA. So that's the personal services and the employee benefits And then the contractual expenses are for specialized training and equipment.
Sure. But if we're spending an incremental $31,000 on those interns, what have you, the salary number that this reflects should be 4 or 5 or 6 times that.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the
Well, usually
question.
benefits are a smaller portion of total comp than base pay. So how much are we kicking?
I can help answer. The fringe benefits, the .8s include health insurance, so
Sure.
that's probably a bigger, and our fringe rate countywide would be roughly 30 to 50%, depending on what the salary is. We still offer the same level of health insurance coverage, so the fringe percentage can be high sometimes, especially if the salary, like for an intern, would be on the lower end of the scale.
So if it's 50%, then we're looking at an underlying comp increase of 60,000, roughly.
I'm not looking at the resolution exactly, but, the fringe costs would include FICA, Medicare,
Sure.
health insurance, unemployment, workers' compensation. So that's all in a template formula that we have that is used for when we're increasing the .1 expenses. It would encompass all of those items.
Fred, I understand where you're coming from. Maddie, is it possible that some of the wages and salaries for these interns are coming from a different account, a different .1 account?
No, it is in our.
It is coming from this account
Point
here?
one, I believe the high increase in the .1 and .8 is for the 50% funded ADA. We did not include his salary in our budget for 2024 because we weren't sure if he'd be funded through the GIVE grant. So I think that the increase that you're seeing is primarily for the 50% ADA that's funded through the GIVE grant. And partly the interns, which is a very low cost relatively.
And also, I think the numbers could be skewed is because they're only filling the gaps where they need, and the money in those accounts already, one could have been shorter than the other, and so they needed more employee benefits, not specifically for those individuals, but for all the individuals in that per account, right? You did refer that it was for some other, but at the end of the day, it's really just, I think,
Well, that
Well-
makes
That
sense if in
amount,
fact we
yeah.
were under budgeted in general in your .8 category, and this is,
And the
covering
point-
that
and
up.
the .1 should have been higher, you think, Fred?
well, no, if it's just talking one person and you've got benefits
Right.
running at 31,000, then, well, all right, that means at the lowest, his incremental salary was 60-odd thousand. Okay, where's that coming
At
from?
least,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's benefits being paid on salary that's not being
Yeah,
shown.
because it's increases in salaries that drive increases in benefits.
Yeah,
And so I was looking for the increase in salaries that's driving this.
yeah, I saw that too.
yeah.
We had
I had the
budgeted
same
more in salary for the revenue for this grant than we had in fringe because we weren't sure what was going to happen. So that's where I think that like you're not seeing as much as an increase in the .1s because we had more in budgeted for .1s than we did for
You
.8s.
you had already accounted for it previously.
Yes,
So one budget's just tighter than the other, and this is equalizing
right,
it. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was assuming when I just kind of balancing, you're using it.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Next proposed resolution is authorize acceptance of New York State reimbursement for Raise the Age initiative.
Okay.
Good morning, Sam Zafoto, Deputy Director of Finance. This resolution is for the Probation Department. This is for our Raise the Age funding. We were just putting this forward to have your approval to submit our reimbursements, which Director Taylor actually has prepared, signed, and ready to send in. So we just need your approval, and this revenue was budgeted in 2024, so no budget amendment to add revenue was needed. I will just make a quick note that the actual award is slightly below the budgeted revenue amount, so in discussions with the director, we do have a plan to stay budget neutral with that reduction.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Next proposed resolution is amend the 2024 budget to implement the coroner vehicle project using funding from the American Rescue Plan Act.
Morning.
Good morning, Dr. Mike Falk, County Physician and Chief Medical Officer.
Anthony Shekels, Coroner Supervisor.
If I may, I'd like to briefly introduce Tony Shekels, our Coroner Supervisor. I know we've talked about this position for a long time. Tony has come on board over the last few weeks. He has been a welcome addition. Tony brings over 20 years of law enforcement experience, working his way up through the ranks to the top ranks of a county sheriff's office outside of Madison, Wisconsin. Tony has a number of years of experience in death investigations, forensics, the list goes on. Tony's a graduate of the FBI National Academy, is certified as a forensic technician, and has many years of supervisory experience. Tony brings a solid foundational support to our coroner program, and the timing has been wonderful as we have recently lost 2 coroners. One to the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office. Ruth Mendez took a job as a death investigator with the ME's office, and another coroner just due to the busyness of life, I suppose. This job is demanding, and so Tony's experience and acceptance of the job has been very welcome. We are here today to discuss the coroner vehicle. The ARPA committee has authorized this funding of $75,000 to come to the legislature for discussion and hopefully approval. We have a need for a vehicle within the coroner's office. Our program responds to over 400 death scenes per year. 115 of those roughly are transported to the medical examiner's office. We have a lot of equipment, and currently our coroners are responding to death scenes in their personal vehicles, which is not always convenient. Tony will likely be responding, at least according to the data, we never know exactly, to roughly 40% of those death scenes occur within that sort of Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5 kind of time frame, at least according to the last couple years of data that we have. Obviously, anything can change. So the important part of this funding this vehicle is that we have potential to save some money. The vehicle really will end up paying for itself. We anticipate at least $20,000 a year of savings in transportation costs. Currently, we have multiple contracts with different funeral homes to transport our decedents to Erie County Medical Examiner's Office, to the tune of roughly $50,000 to $55,000 per year. We anticipate hopefully being able to transport at least 40% of those ourselves. So within 3.5 years, this vehicle essentially pays for itself, and then moving forward, we anticipate continued savings, and that's anticipated. That's really at a minimum at this point. There's probably potential for more savings as we move down the road, but I think it's fiscally, I think it makes sense, and it serves the purpose of our coroners having a vehicle with the equipment needed, and we passed around some pictures, an example of what we're looking at. The tendency, especially since COVID, is to move coroner vehicles to a separate compartments. You know, typically in the past, we've had transporters utilizing, you know, minivans or Suburbans or things like that. The trouble is that with this increasing, you know, potential exposure to infectious disease, biohazards, strong odors, the tendency has been to separate the coroner or the transporter and the decedent into separate compartments, which really makes sense from a disinfection standpoint. So we're looking at right now, and this hasn't been a final decision, but a 3/4 type truck, 3/4 ton type truck with a formal working commercial rear part or cap on the back. This is a trend in the business, and it also would have the ability to tow in the event that we ever decide on a morgue, which will hopefully be another topic of discussion over the next couple of months. This, we feel, is a very professional type of approach and offers all the dignity that we can offer for our decedents being transported. So it does have the ability to hold up to 2 decedents. So
I was just gonna ask that.
yeah, so we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Guys, where will the vehicle be housed? Or will you take it home, Anthony, or?
So I think at this point, I will probably take it home, and that'll give me the ability, if they call me and I'm available and I can go to a scene at night.
Okay.
And that'll just increase the savings.
All right.
It's hard with everybody living all over the county to switch the vehicle from one place to another. But I'm centrally located, I live here in Hartfield, kind of.
Okay.
So if a coroner did need it, because there are scenes where it would come in handy. We've had a couple scenes in the last week where we could have used more equipment. Whereas if they needed to come get the vehicle, it would be available.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Last night I asked a few comments. I'm glad you brought the pictures today so we could see what it is. Not hearing any other questions. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good idea.
Next proposed resolution is amend Chautauqua County Department of Public Health 2024 budget to include the New York State DOH Public Health Corps Fellowship Fund Program funding.
Good morning, Sam Zaffoto, Deputy Director of Finance. This is a resolution is good news. This was a grant that the Health Department had that was expiring at the end of last year. So it was not included in the 2024 budget, but through their great work of the Health Department, they secured an extension. We've been using the funds, so this is just to properly amend the budget to put the grant in 2024.
Okay. Questions, comments? Keep coming with good news, Sam. I
wish I
have a
brought more
feeling
of
you're
these.
gonna be back with some bad news soon, but, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next, proposed resolution number 10 is New York State Department of Health Nurse Family Partnership Grant.
Good morning, Lacey Wilson, Public Health Director. Also here to just provide any background if there are questions about Nurse Family Partnership, but very similar to the resolution you just passed. This is an amendment to the budget to secure some funds and basically a carryover program that's been transitioned over to a community-based organization, prior to which we were solely doing that work. And so there was just basically an overlap in some of the finance transition. So this is pulling this money back to the department.
Yep, and this was not included in the 2024 budget either.
What type of duplication was it? Just what type of error?
So it was just in the sense that as we were kind of rolling our program down and getting it set up and providing the technical assistance to JCLC, who basically now does this work, although there are other community organizations who kind of also do that work. It was just kind of the transition with the finance department in terms of the claims and how much that would actually need to be forecasted to go to JCLC as opposed to stay with us.
Sure. No, and I expect that probably other departments may see those same transitional things happening.
Yeah,
But,
and I think probably even more so in the public health department because we are considered the provider of last resort. So as mandated services come down from the state, we typically are tasked with taking those on and either, hopefully being able to find a community organization that we can help build sustainability plans with, help them with the technical assistance and framework to pass it on to them. There are instances where that can't happen. The community-based organizations might not have the capacity, and we do that program, in perpetuity. But this is a great example of community-based partners dedicated to this work, willing to take it on, and Kathy Burgess and her staff just doing a wonderful job to transition it over to them.
budget transfers I always look at as a good thing in sense to a point, if we're not underestimating things. To a good point is our checks and balances system was working and wanted to make a correction here. And that's shows that, there's thorough investigation of all the monies in and out of all the departments. And that's, catching this and making it correct. So we hope that that's fluid across everywhere.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Sam and Diana and Blake and the finance team, Joanne Toffel, they've just been wonderful support to our department. We do transfer so much back and forth with community-based organizations and things as we really try to get them up and running. So they are invaluable to the work that we do in order to do that efficiently.
Yep. Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next proposed resolution, number 11, is an authorized grant application for 2024 Community Development Block Grant funding through the New York State Office of Community Renewal Septic and Wells Program.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Worsley. I am the Director of Environmental Health Services for the Health Department here in Chautauqua County. So we would like to apply for another round of grant funding through the Community Development Block Grant. This grant that we would be applying for is to assist low and moderate income individuals and families with septic system replacement funds and private well work funds to improve public health infrastructure, in the more rural areas of Chautauqua County.
Questions, comments?
Comment I would say is that this is a good project across the county because I keep seeing other grants for expanding water lines and then expanding sewer lines at tremendous cost, when often it's just people haven't maintained their wells. I know where we have a well, we use it a lot at the winery, but if you don't, I guess they call it pickle it, but basically if you don't acid treat it once about every 5 years, it calcifies up. So if you don't maintain it, it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And then people start jumping up and down about wanting a water line. And
Well-
this is way more cost effective.
Yeah, and there's some places in the county where those sort of municipal lines and
not
municipal
possible.
expansions simply aren't going to happen anytime in our future.
And shouldn't,
Yeah.
and shouldn't. Because you run chlorinated water into a private system and pretty soon you've killed all the bacteria in the septic system and you got another problem and here comes the sewer line at an even bigger cost. Whereas just doing it the old fashioned way is better. Question, what's moderate What's low and moderate income brackets?
Sure, so I did bring the chart, for for a single individual, the maximum income to qualify for this program would be $46,800. And then for, you know, a two-person family, $53,450 and so on.
Okay. So it covers quite a lot of, yeah.
Yeah,
Quite
it
a lot of
does.
rural people, yeah.
It does, and we've run this program before, and, you know, we always use all the money. We always have people at the end of a cycle who are on the waiting list for the next time that we are able to secure the grant funding. You know, unfortunately, septic systems are expensive, well work is expensive, and, you know, a lot of times people don't necessarily put a piggy bank aside for this sort of work. They don't realize they need it until it's too late and they really, really need it.
I know, I just did one.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Dan, just one. Jessica, is this a partial payment? No, it pays the full 100% cost of a new septic system?
Yeah, so the way, and so there's never a point at which the homeowner or property owner has to give any money out of pocket. The whole thing is
Covered by
set up.
this grant?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Is
So-
that
Maybe you
option
could make it go
available?
farther if there was skin in the game, though.
That's
Yeah,
what I was
it's
thinking.
not the way the program is designed. It's not the way the grant is structured.
That's not under your control then.
Yeah,
I don't like that, but it's not under your
it's
control.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, the skin in your game aspect would be helpful, even if you could get a 20% increase. Like you said, most people don't save. It's hard to come up with all of the resources, but if you could come up with a portion, it would help. But that portion would, if you did 10 septics and, and you got a 10% on all of them, that you can do an extra, so, you know.
But
Not-
unfortunately, that's not the way
Not
it's
the way
set
it
up.
works.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the model that we utilized when the legislator granted us funding through the ARPA to do the lead program stuff. That's the model we utilized, is to make sure that the homeowner and the property owner had some skin in the game. You know, the way that this grant is set up, it's just not.
And-
We can't do anything about that.
Because
yeah.
you have looked into it to see if
Mhm.
you could. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next proposed resolution number 12 is authorize intermunicipal agreement with City of Dunkirk.
Is it yours?
Mark Geis, Deputy County Executive for Economic Development.
Dave McCoy, Chautauqua County Watershed Coordinator.
Good morning, gentlemen. What do we have in front of us today? Sounds exciting.
Well, this resolution is in connection with a intermunicipal agreement for the city of Dunkirk to do engineering design for dredging in the harbor. During the contract review process, it's determined that we need a legislative authorization to enter into this agreement, so here we are.
How long has it been since we've dredged that area?
How long?
Yeah.
You know, the most complicated thing about dredging is getting the permits to do a bathymetric survey, some sampling to characterize the sediments, come up with a sediment management plan, come up with the funding for the dredging, hire a contractor, on and on.
Sure.
This is just for the design.
Just for the design. Well, at the end of the creeks in our area are always sedimenting up an area, or current is filling the harbor or something, right? And so I was just curious, how long has it been since if we've ever been dredged? Do you know that? I mean, has it been 20 years, 30 years?
Within the recreational harbor, Holiday Harbor, where this, Kennewick Bay Harbor, excuse me, where this is, it hasn't been dredged 10 years that I'm aware of. Portions of the federal channel have been dredged by the Army Corps of Engineers, some of which are in that general area along that inner breakwater. That happens every 3 to 5 years. but it's just ongoing fact of life when it comes to managing a harbor on the Great Lakes.
Yep, understood, and it's important that we maintain that dredging program, because otherwise, before you know it, you got low water, and it's impassable, so.
Yeah, and you know, I gotta tell you, over the 4th of July holiday, my wife and I were in Dunkirk on the pier. And it was just a wonderful experience. People were coming and going, boats going in, going out, the restaurants and shops were full, the trolley was running. I mean, it's an economic driver for the county. It's very important.
You know, and it's a safe harbor as well. We get a lot of transient boaters coming in larger boats with deeper drafts. So this is really important to our economy.
Sure, the Great Lakes is utilized still for transportation. And like you said, a safe harbor is important. You get a storm that rolls up, or failure, something happens and the boat needs to get into somewhere.
Or
so
gassing up.
Gassing up, anything, yeah. So it's important that area is maintained so it can be utilized. And at the end of the day, it's got to come from somewhere. So it doesn't, it's expensive to do.
As I said yesterday, I mean, we obviously need to do the regular maintenance of harbors, and it's less expensive if we do it regularly. But if every time we do it, we gotta spend $30,000 on consultants to do paperwork, that just bothers me. And I wonder, is there any opportunity to push back with the DEC and go, wait a minute, we're doing this every year, it's good repair and maintenance. Why do I have to do, 30 grand every time I go to do a regular maintenance program? I mean, is there any opportunity to be more reasonable about something that's regular maintenance?
Could that maintenance window be larger?
Well, there's an old saying, we're from the government, we're here to help you.
In my experience, over many years dealing with the DEC, it's their way. There's really no pushing back. I don't know the answer to the question. If you do it more often, does that mean you have to push less paperwork? I doubt it.
Well, I mean, how often you do it is determined by Mother Nature, I think.
Right.
And physics, but it just, to do 30,000 of paperwork every time you're doing something obviously necessary just strikes me as wrong.
I don't disagree.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, just to follow up on that question alone, so when you're looking to Mr. Johnson's question, as we apply for permits every year for herbicide use in Chautauqua Lake, it's the same thing. Unfortunately, the frustration is the DEC sees every year as a new entity. We've asked, if you're looking, and we've talked about not even pilot programs, but working with the DEC to say, we're gonna focus on this area for 3 years, can we get a 3-year window? They won't do it. So we're at the mercy of the DEC, so it's, we try, we do push back on different things throughout our work with them when it comes to especially our lakes and waterways, but they're very set, very regimented, and that's how we, it's frustrating, I assure you, but that.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate Legislator Johnson's question because it is not unheard of for the DEC to grant multiple year permits. It happens, as the county executive points out, we've not been successful in obtaining them, but I appreciate the question, and I think it's something that we should continue to ask for and pursue.
Agreed, and so I say if we could open that maintenance term up to that'd be helpful. PJ, do you, at some of the state level meetings that you attend and speak with the governor, is this sometimes a topic that you've pushed by her, or could you?
Not necessarily the governor. We have a very open communication with our regional director for the DEC, and she shares our concern. We do know these are, but.
It's one thing to share it, it's another to actually have action out of it, so.
I 100%. We could ask, I haven't sat down with any time we've been with the governor asked this, but, I think there are opportunities now with the state investment in Chautauqua Lake and looking at these opportunities. I think another key we're gonna talk about is the next piece with, the Army Corps investment. So are there opportunities where these windows could be open for a 3-year period? And as we look forward, those are options we're always going to pursue and discuss with the DEC. as we move forward and start to take a more management approach to Chautauqua Lake and other waterways as well moving forward.
When, at the end of the day, that we probably will still be spending that money, but it would be going toward the project itself or more application, and that's the point of it. And we don't wanna certainly don't wanna circumvent any, permitting, but I think, or research, but, I think overdoing is something that we are seeing also, so.
You know, the other issue is
Something
that,
we're doing.
you know, each year it changes, depending on what kind of winter we have, what kind of, you know, I mean, we saw that in Barcelona Harbor within a 1-year time frame, it filled in with sediment. I mean, so there are a lot of changes that a permit from 2 years ago or a year ago might not be applicable to the current year.
Strike that from the record. You're not supposed to say that.
I'm just, you know, I'm just saying.
But David, you think it has been about 10 years since the harbor was stretched? Roughly?
At Inner Harbor, yes,
Okay. So it's been a while.
it's been a while.
In the true fashion of Lake Erie, they dredge, take it offshore and put it back in Lake Erie. We saw that with the federal dredging of Barcelona Harbor. So it begs the question, you know, when you take it out and you put it back to where it came from, you know, there are ecological reasons for that,
But it's not where it came from. It came from Chautauqua Creek.
Yeah.
In the case of Barcelona,
Yes.
some, yes, yeah.
or the creeks.
Yeah,
And the
uh-huh,
shore, and
yes.
the degradation of the shoreline. But it didn't come out of the middle of the lake in a fit.
No.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Under protest.
Thank you. Next proposed resolution is 13, is authorized use of Chautauqua County American Rescue Plan Act to fund the East Chautauqua Lake Sewer Study.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to join this conversation as the chairman of the legislature.
Thank you.
So I look at this as being sort of a capstone to our efforts to improve Chautauqua Lake. This will be the last gap in municipal wastewater collection system on Chautauqua Lake. The ARPA Review Committee approved an expenditure of $40,000 for the preparation of a map plan and report to support district formation and funding for this project.
Mr. Chairman, during the discussion about this resolution at the PED committee last night, it occurred to me that it might be helpful for me to explain the path forward after this study is completed. So this $40,000 will get us a study to determine how this area should be sewered, where the effluent should go. It can go north to the treatment plant in Mayville. It can go south to the treatment plant in Celeron. We could have a new treatment plant. Once this report comes up with a recommendation, that will be reviewed by the administrative boards of the 2 sewer districts that could potentially receive the effluent. Then based upon that, one or both of those sewer districts would commission a map and plan report, which would be an easy lift from this study report. That would then be presented to a county sewer agency, which we will need to reestablish, to review and make a recommendation to the legislature as to pursuing the creation of a district and how it would be structured and how the potential funding would be for that. The county legislature would then, if they agree to proceed, call a public hearing and then pass a motion to create that sewer district. Once we've created that sewer district, we have to establish bonding for the work to be done, then, and do an environmental review. Then we would proceed to pursue state funding to make it affordable to the users. So this is a long process we go through. The deadline to submit those applications for funding will be about this time next year. So we have to go through that whole process to get us in line to apply for funding next year. So this is the first step, a very important step, but this is the first step in a long process to get us to a sewer project.
You said the last gap. What is that specific place?
This extends from the terminus of the Center Chautauqua Lake Sewer District at Midway State Park. And then the gap continues to the terminus of the North Chautauqua Lake Sewer District at Galloway Road, which is just beyond
The old golf course.
the old golf course.
Okay. And that is the last gap around the entire lake.
Yes.
So it picks up all of Point Chautauqua.
It does include Point Chautauqua, yes.
Simple.
Been through it many times, right?
Yeah. We've been down this road before, and we've had great progress so far.
Get her done.
Get her done.
No, I think it's good news that, it's been a goal, to make sure that infrastructure was around the whole lake, not only just for the utilization of those individuals to utilize that system, but also for the protection of the lake, and clean up some of those poorly conditioned systems that were assisting in some of our growth of unwanted things in the lake, so, and fertilizing it. So I think it's good.
And the timing is really fortuitous because there has never, well, not since the 70s has there been federal funding available at the level that we see today.
Yeah.
And as well as the environmental benefits of this, what often goes unmentioned, and I'll say this because the public health staff is here, sewer systems eliminate a lot of public health concerns that can exist from septic systems that are not functioning properly, especially if they're close by water bodies or streams. They can spread that public health concern quite a ways.
And I'll add the economic development benefits as well,
Yep.
clearly.
Any other questions, comments?
Dan, just
Terry?
guys, so there could be the possibility of a new sewage treatment plant between Mayville and Selron, possibly?
It's something we need to look at.
Okay.
To get the funding, Terry, you have to make sure you have explored all the options.
Okay. It just seems like we have one in Mayville, we have one in Selron. It doesn't seem to me offhand that we would need a third sewage treatment plant, but that's something the study will determine.
Yes. And,
Okay.
and we agree with you, Terry.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next proposed resolution is 14. It's amend the 2024 budget to provide the federal co-share for the aquatic ecosystem restoration feasibility study for Chautauqua Lake. We do have a portion, we have a 10-minute video. Do we want to watch that first, or is there any comments or something before we get started?
Well, I gotta say, I'm thrilled to be here to talk about this today because I think this is gonna be one of those significant projects that people look back on decades from now and say, this truly was a turning point for the health of Chautauqua Lake.
Good. Any other comments before we watch the video? I think we're good.
Oh, we got the same audio problem.
This is a recording of a short overview of the upcoming Chautauqua Lake Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration Study. This recording will be shown at the Chautauqua County Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting on Wednesday, July 17th, and the Chautauqua County Audit and Control Committee meeting on Thursday, July 18th. I will present this information in person at the full legislature meeting on July 24th. Today, I would like to provide an overview of the proposed Chautauqua Lake Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration, or AER, study, and provide an idea for you all about what to expect as we kick off this project. We'll talk about the project history, the threats to the lake and the impact of those threats, the foundation of research and work that you all have already built. And we'll go into a little of what's next, including the study timeline, what to expect for the first 90 days, the cost share schedule, and future engagement. The Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration Mission of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers seeks to restore degraded ecosystem structures, function, and natural processes to a more natural condition. We are authorized for this project under Section 12016 of America's Water Infrastructure Act of 2018, Public Law 115-270, to conduct a feasibility study for ecosystem restoration and flood risk management of Chautauqua Lake, New York. As you all know, Chautauqua County will be the non-federal sponsor for this study. This project was authorized in 2018. Authorization gives the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permission to complete the study, but not necessarily funding to complete the study. Several times from 2018 through 2022, Chautauqua County submitted letters of intent to participate as the non-federal sponsor on this project. However, at these times, the project was not funded. In 2023, Chautauqua County again submitted a letter of intent to participate as the non-federal sponsor. In this year, the project received $500,000 through FY24 congressionally delegated spending to kick off the study. The study will examine the various threats to Chautauqua Lake. These include excess sedimentation, which affects habitat structure and availability for aquatic species. It also affects the growth of a nuisance or invasive aquatic plants. Excess nutrients promote harmful algal blooms, promote anoxia in the deep water habitats, and promote the growth of nuisance and invasive aquatic plants. These two things are exacerbated by climate change, which increases sedimentation and nutrient runoffs and further promotes HABs and anoxia. The county and community have built the foundation for this project. There have been numerous ongoing efforts to improve conditions in the lake, and these include the following: the 2010 Chautauqua Lake Watershed Management Plan, which reduced sediment and nutrient inputs to the lake, ongoing research by universities and institutions such as the Jefferson Project, the Bowling Green State University, the State University of New York at Fredonia, SUNY Oneonta, the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry, and others. And there have been other previous studies and ongoing efforts, including the macrophyte management strategy, the dredging report, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Habitats Program, other surveys and monitoring to examine aquatic vegetation, HABs, water quality, and the recent grants that have been used to address wastewater infrastructure and ecosystem improvements. These efforts provide the foundation on which the current effort will be successful. This prior work provided the foundation on which we can build this engineering study. This engineering study will consider all possible ways to address problems in the lake. We will seek holistic solutions and leverage existing work and knowledge, and engage the public and stakeholders to help us define the problems, opportunities, and to identify potential solutions. I would like to talk a little about what is next, including the study timeline, the first 90 days of the project schedule, the cost share schedule, and engagement moving forward. This shows the general timeline for this type of study, what we call a 3x3 study. These 3x3 studies are generally supposed to take no longer than 3 years to complete and cost no more than $3 million. Along this timeline, the diamonds show products that will be produced to meet the timeline, and the ovals show significant project milestones that we will aim for over the course of the study. The first milestone will be the feasibility cost share agreement. We have targeted execution of this agreement no later than the 30th of September 2024, but we can move that earlier. During the alternatives milestone meeting, approximately 90 days later, we will define the federal interest in the project and present the initial array of alternatives. Approximately 9 months to a year later after that, we will have the tentatively selected plan milestone, where we will describe and show the tentatively selected plan and receive approval to release the report for public review. We will release the report approximately 60 days after the tentatively selected plan milestone. During the agency decision milestone, we will receive agency endorsement of the tentatively selected plan. During the district engineer's recommendation milestone, we will submit the final report to headquarters for the final review process, and following that, the chief's report will be presented by the chief of engineers for recommendation to Congress. Once the federal cost share agreement is signed, we will complete a number of tasks to get the project off the ground in the first 90 days. These include developing a refined scope, schedule, and budget, project management and review plans, and formulating the initial array of alternatives. Project scoping will really help us to identify the stakeholders, the data and analysis needs, the problems, opportunities, objectives, and constraints that define this particular problem. We will conduct planning charrettes to get the input of stakeholders. During the planning charrettes, we will work to develop that initial array of alternatives that will be examined through the engineering analysis phase of the study. This is an overview of the proposed cost share schedule. As I noted previously, this project has been authorized for 3 million years and up to $3 million. This project will be financially cost shared 50-50 with Chautauqua County. A specific cost share schedule will be developed during the scoping phase, including where and when work in kind can be contributed towards the non-federal sponsor cost share requirements. Generally, we would need non-federal sponsor contributions annually by September 1st, prior to the start of the new fiscal year, which begins October 1st. However, the start of this project will likely be after September 1st, so there is a period of catch-up shown here, where we may need up to $600,000 from the non-federal sponsor in matching funds by December 30th. This depends on the schedule and budget that we develop with Chautauqua County during the scoping phase. Again, the non-federal sponsor can contribute work in kind as part of their cost share. Qualifying work in kind will be identified by the non-federal sponsor during the scoping phase. Finally, I wanted to emphasize that participation in early scoping by our stakeholders on this project is critical. We need your assistance defining problems and understanding how you are impacted by the problems. We need help defining the opportunities and how things could be better. We need help defining the constraints. What do we need to consider as we develop these potential solutions? And defining the objectives. What should we be trying to achieve? We will ask for your assistance to identify data availability and identify what we need to understand. We will discuss potential solutions to the problems and ask for your preferences for certain actions over others. Thank you all for your time today. This slide shows the project context. I am the project manager. My name is Marian Dippers, and my email address is shown. I will also be assisted throughout this process by my project planner, Caitlin Keyhart. Her email address is also shown. We look forward to meeting with the Legislative Committee in person on the 24th of July. Thank you for your attention.
I hope that 3 million years and $3 million was not a Freudian slip.
So there you have it. Our stakeholders for a very long time have been clamoring for an expert. Somebody from outside of our sphere, not connected with Chautauqua County. You can take a independent and holistic look at all the things that are going on, and somebody with very strong credentials to be able to make the recommendations that need to be done to restore the ecological health of Chautauqua Lake. We found that with the Army Corps, and moreover, we found a partner that is willing to bring dollar for dollar matching to the table. That's significant.
I would like to add that this is something that we've been pursuing for 10 years now. And we've finally reached the point where not only do we have an authorization for this study, but we have the required federal funding to start the process. I would also like to point out for perspective that Chautauqua County and the community members and local foundations and New York State spend millions of dollars a year to maintain Chautauqua Lake. Not improve it, just maintain it. And in my lifetime, we've never seen any federal funding to help Chautauqua Lake. We now have an opportunity to take the science that the community and the county have been paying to develop regarding Chautauqua Lake, and we have a willing partner who wants to take that science, that data, that information, and turn it into action plans to improve Chautauqua Lake. We're no longer talking about just maintaining the condition, we're talking about improving it for the first time in a long, long, long time.
Also to add, I would like to, point out that without the help of Congressman Langworthy, we would not be sitting here. This process has started, as Pierre said, over 10 years ago, and Congressman Langworthy was finally able to get the ball across the goal line and get this funding established for us to begin. As Pierre said, we've been maintaining the lake. This now gives us a position to improve, and most recently it was expressed at the Alliance meeting to look at a management strategy moving forward with Chautauqua Lake. So we feel this is a pivotal moment for Chautauqua Lake in its history. So again, we appreciate everybody, but for the first time in a long time, we're really ready to move. And if you look at questions have been asked by the legislature, our involvement with the Jefferson projects and funding other studies, where has this led us, or where will this get us? As you listen to the Army Corps, especially from those in the Pittsburgh region and what they've commented on this project, we've done a lion's share of the study already through our efforts from the Jefferson project, Bowling Green, NC State, SUNY Oneonta, SUNY Fredonia. So we're really excited about the investments have been made continuously over years but those are now paying dividends as the Army Corps is using that information and giving us, basically, we're a step ahead as we begin this process.
I'm gonna add one other thing. You know, this is a necessary step that we need to take in order to tap into that federal money. We won't be able to tap into that if we don't do this. So, you know, I know Fred and others, another study, right? But, we
This
have
is
to do
the
this.
study,
And-
though.
And by the way, this is, you know, we've got a lot of information, from the studies that we have done in the past that they're gonna utilize in order to develop engineering solutions, which is very important. The last thing I wanted to say is, you know, this group here, they're all rock stars. I mean, PJ and Pierre and Dave, Congressman Langworthy, our lobbyist consultant, Steve Dye. And we go down to Washington, every fall. We've been doing it for, what, 3-4 years now? And we're meeting with the upper echelon of the Army Corps of Engineers and others, and we're really working it. So finally, here we are at a point where we can finally get this thing going.
Yes, and elaborating on our federal lobbyist, Mark, thank you for bringing that up. This committee is asked each year to come up with the small amount of funds that we pay our federal lobbyist. This started 10 years ago on our first trip to Washington with our federal lobbyist. And if it wasn't for him introducing us to the right people at Army Corps of Engineers, we would never have had this opportunity presented to us and had the opportunity to pursue it. Each year when we went back, each year we go back, and with his guidance and his leverage and coordination and insight, puts us in front of the right people to continue to push this ball along. So that small amount of money that we ask each year for funding for this federal lobbyist has now brought us an opportunity for millions of dollars of federal money.
And we're proposing that the funding come out of the 2% occupancy tax reserve, which has a balance currently of $653,000.
And just to put this into a better perspective, I think one that's easy for us to get our arms around, our federal cost share for this initial phase is 1.5 million. Each year, tourists bring over $282 million into Chautauqua Lake, into our county for spending. And 25% of the sales tax revenue collected in Chautauqua County comes from 12 communities that surround Chautauqua Lake. And, you know, even if our little occupancy tax, 5% occupancy tax, our revenues were around 2.2 million last year. That equates to $44 million in economic activity in the hospitality sector. It's above board. Of course, there's probably other transactions that we're not aware of, but it just gives you an idea of the economic engine that Chautauqua Lake is for Chautauqua County. And this investment seems like a wise investment at the time, and as I said at the beginning, it's one that people will look back in a decade from now and say, this is really where we turned the corner for Chautauqua Lake.
So a couple orders of business. So that on everyone's desk there has been a amended version placed in front of you. One of those amendments, I am assuming, is the use of what fund is being utilized. So on the original, it was using unassigned fund balance, and so I'm assuming that amendment that was made is using the reserved fund balance. And a question that I have, you know, as I see our commitment is not to exceed the $1.5 million over a 3-year term. What are we spending on the lake this year already in the budget? Do we know that number pertaining to the other projects that we have going as far as like the Jefferson project? What was our input into
All
that?
told,
Yeah.
3.2 million.
Okay.
And that's not just from Chautauqua County, you know, that's charitable foundations,
Yep.
private donations, money from the state.
Understood, yeah. So we're through other projects also, we are putting significant research and energy and funding toward the lake, which is been this
The
piece
Jefferson
here is
project
kind of
helped to put us on the New York State radar. You know, we're becoming well-known throughout New York State for our efforts, and it's paying dividends in the funding that's coming to us.
Yeah.
This project will put us on the national stage.
Yep. Well, understood. And, it seems like a large investment for the county. But I think, the rewards is surpassing the investment. And that's what the hope is, that will do that. Questions?
If you look at simple math, if you're looking at roughly $240 million a year in economic activity, and a large part with Chautauqua Lake, even if we reduce, I think as Dave said, to 40 million, over 3 years, that's 120 million, and we're looking at an investment of 1.5 maximum. Now, one of the things that Dr. Davis had said is the work we've already done could potentially reduce that cost. So this year it's 600,000, so we're looking at a balance of about $900,000 moving forward. And then how much of this, whether it's in-kind service provided by the county and/or studies that we've already done, could apply and then reduce the cost. So we've poised ourselves in previous investments to, wise investments to help us right now in this situation. That's the reason why they were so critical. And as we've said, from those of us here, myself and Pierre and others with the lake stakeholders, those were done in concert for putting us in this position, basically setting us up to where we are right now.
And a point I have, I suppose, is it isn't involved. We're looking at an investment of 600,000 currently, but it is the potential of up to 1.5 million. So we're making that decision of really the full amount almost. Future plans. Where do you suspect that future payments might be? Where would those be coming from?
Well, the timing of this, these $600,000 commitment has to be made now.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have an opportunity to include this in the 2024 budget, but going forward, we will have an opportunity to include our local share requirements in the future budgets, 25, 26 budgets.
Pierre, to take from the 2% funding or the unassigned fund balance?
TBD.
That's what I was afraid of.
It's a
That's
simple
what I was afraid
statement.
Looking forward to those budget review meetings, aren't you?
Well, and
Yes,
you,
I am.
You simply said that we'll be able to review it, and I think, well, great, another, 5, 6, 700,000 hole that we need to fill, but we always do. So,
Maybe I'm getting 3 years ahead of myself, but, I think this is a great investment. It's a capstone investment, and it's time, and it's the gateway to get moving. From what little I know, being back here 10 years now, the communities around Chautauqua Lake, or the interest groups and the organizations, can be quite opinionated. And right down to the point of suing each other, which blew my mind. So we've got 3 years to get all those people going in the same direction and get them to understand that this is it. And we're going to come out of this with a plan which we're going to execute. And that it's not just going to end up being a book on a shelf somewhere. That this is going to lead to action. And, speak now or forever hold your peace, but, no lawsuits after this. And I don't know how we go about that work as a community, but it's,
One of the tools we're using along with this is we've created the Chautauqua Lake Watershed and Management Alliance. And the alliance, we passed, actually it was, a resolution was made, a motion was made and passed to look into a lake management model going forward. So that will move, and again, that's bringing all of the stakeholders together, and my statement at that meeting was, we all need to be together with this. And they are realizing that the Army Corps is that, they're non-biased, they don't have a stake in herbicides, mechanical harvesting, watershed, they don't. They're an outside agency that, and we've said, we come together on this. And the groups, it's been a struggle. I can't say it's been a walk in the park, but I think we're all looking at the same end result. You're finally having somebody larger than, one individual group investing in somebody to come in and do a study. So
Good.
this is, on that, this is the Army Corps, this is the foremost authority on this. We're letting them help us make the decisions as we go.
Yeah, and you can also tell from the video that they have a very significant public engagement component to this. So they're bringing all the stakeholders together. Tell us what you think, right? Tell us what your opinion is. So, and they've been doing that for a very long time and are very good at that. So hopefully that helps to sort of quell the unrest, if you will, and bring everyone reading off the same sheet of music.
Good.
Everyone's voice will be heard. The scope is roughly defined, but it'll be well refined by the time we get down the road. They'll be looking at all reasonable solutions, all possible solutions.
You look at it, I asked you what we were spending on the lake this year or last year. What were we spending 15 years ago? Probably not a lot. So, it's kind of been a pretty hefty investment over the last few years, but we hope that will trend downward eventually also. And we can have an area where we do need to spend money to maintain, just as we did speak about, like a dredging project in the harbor in Dunkirk. That's a project that is supplemental, but unfortunate matter is we're going to be spending a lot of money on the lake for a number of years, and that's the reality. It's going to be probably through my tenure on the legislature, so I'm probably seeing these yearly. And in a significant thing, we need in a phase of revitalizing the lake, and it's not going to happen overnight, and it costs money to do that. And we've invested this much so far. You can't bow out after a few years in either. You kind of have to see it through the end. So we're in it for the long haul, unfortunately. Terry? Yeah.
Real quick, we've been addressing the symptoms and not treating the disease.
Yeah.
And that's what this is gonna do, is treat the disease.
Yeah.
So that your costs go down, hopefully, right, in the future.
Yeah.
As it was shared with me, again, even the alliance was formed with 4 legislators getting off a boat saying we need to start doing something, organizing everyone, because it was just, there were battles as, the louder voice got the funding, and so many funding sources. So now the funding is funneled into the alliance then disperses the funding as we go forward. But one of the things that, 2 individuals who chaired the Chautauqua Lake Management Commission, I think is what it was called, spoke with us and said, if this were a $50 million amusement park, we would invest in it because we knew we built it. We've been given a $50 million amusement park. Who invests in it? That's been the question. And the arguments could be the state owns the bottom. There's back and forth, but we need to do something in order to. Again, if you look at components, the institution is looking at roughly about $348 million of economic generation there. Would they be there without Chautauqua Lake? You add the $240+ million of revenue, a large chunk of that comes from, Chautauqua Lake, whether it's winter, summer, spring, and fall. You're looking at possibly $500 million of economic, revenue a year generated by that body of water. So, yeah, and the governor this year has invested $16 million in Chautauqua Lake. So we're very confident. And again, with the work we're doing, it's getting us the notoriety or on the radar that they're doing this right. We're doing it the right way. We're getting the science behind it. We're getting the support behind it by stakeholders. So we're, I'm very confident that we're there. But that funding piece is always been, yes, Dan, as you said, it's increased over the years. But we feel very confident now. The money will be used even more wisely as we go forward.
And as I look back at the many resolutions that I write that involve Chautauqua Lake, the first whereas clause, Chautauqua Lake is an invaluable asset to Chautauqua County. I think all of us here realize that.
Well, heck, I can tell you from personal experience, way down at the winery, come summertime, It's not so much people from the institution as it's people with all the cottages all around the lake that are the core of our business. They're from Pittsburgh, they're from Cleveland, they're from, New Mexico. But, so way down in Westfield, we see it every weekend.
Other questions, comments?
I guess I'd just like to say, I appreciate the presentation we saw. I appreciate what you four guys have brought to us this morning. I'm sold. I've been here since 2009, not directly in the discussion, but hearing, and I'm excited that some action can be taken. And not just the maintenance action, but something moving forward that'll just help the general health and economy of Chautauqua Lake. So good job. I'm sold. I'm voting for it. There you go.
Terry?
Mark, in addition to what you just said, I think, Pierre, you made the point that we're transitioning from maintenance to improvement of the lake. And there's no question, the lake is an important economic driver here in Chautauqua County. So I think this is important. This investment of $1.5 million, David, you mentioned economic activity to the lake of $44 million per year. So this investment of $1.5 million over the 3 years should increase that economic activity as far as you can tell, or your projections?
The occupancy tax revenues have increased every year since their inception. And with the exception of 2019 and 2020, when we were settled with the pandemic, they've still exceeded our expectations. They weren't what they were the previous year, but they had a tremendous rebound the following year. It tells us that the occupancy tax program, the 2% side with the watershed and lake improvements, and the 3% side with the tourism and recreation developments, the program works. It's been recognized by the DEC for an Environmental Excellence Award in 2017. Nobody else does it like this. We're ahead of the curve in so many ways.
Okay, so what are you saying that our 2% and 3% occupancy thing is increasing because of the economic activity around the lake?
Of course.
Okay.
Why else would it increase?
Oh, inflation.
Well, yeah, that too. But, okay, so in your opinion, this investment is a good investment? It should increase the economic activity even more than what we have now?
I would say
you
I would say yes.
Okay.
Well, increase and help to preserve. The HABs, the concern about HABs is global, but it's particularly magnified here in Chautauqua Lake because it's so important to us. And if for some reason people start to get sick, or we have to close all our beaches, that's the kind of stuff that we just don't need to see. And it's like trust. It takes years to build trust, but you can lose that trust in a heartbeat. And I think that's particularly true with Chautauqua Lake. You come here, people invest. People are always talking about property values and how we need to protect them, and they're concerned about them going forward. As a real estate person, you probably haven't seen lake properties slide on their valuation. They always tend to go up.
Pretty much.
I think we're on the right track.
Okay. Well, look, I think it's an important project. I'll support it. Going forward, as far as using money from the unassigned fund balance, I'm not there. We'll, like Pierre suggested, that's a discussion for the future. But look, it's a worthwhile project, and I think it needs to be supported.
Any other questions, comments? No, I just want to applaud the work that everyone has put into this, not only this year, but the years that it's taken. As Pierre stated, it's been 10 years on the works. It's been something that we have hoped for, And in hoping for that, we knew that it was gonna cost also. So here's the cost. But we're glad that this resolution is in front of us. It's a good thing. We're thankful that if this passes, that the work can begin. I want to thank the work of our congressman. It was important that he was able to secure the funding that he did and really get the kickstart started. And it was trolling around for a while because of a lack of those initial funds. So I want to thank him for kicking that over the goal line. So any other comments or questions before we vote?
No, sir.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is it for our proposed resolutions. We have a few discussion items. Would anyone be interested in a brief recess
Since I
before
signed this
we?
already, yeah.
Are you?
Yeah, I think so.
If we just take a 5-minute break real quick, and we'll be right back and reconvene, so we'll be back. Thank you. At this time, we'll reconvene the meeting. And on the table, we have some discussion items. The first discussion item is a presentation.
Yep.
Would you guys please introduce yourselves
Sure.
and what you're going to be presenting to us about
Great,
today?
thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Erica Handley. I am a director with Drescher and Malecki, and with me is Jared Picard. He is the senior manager. We served as the auditors, the external auditors for the county's December 31st, 2023 audit, and we are here to present to you the results of that audit.
Perfect.
Kitty did send the draft financial statements to you all this morning. If you want to go through those when you have time, a few relevant pages you may want to look at when you're flipping through those. Pages 16 and 18, if you just want to jot them down, those are your fund statements. Those are the major funds. Pages 20 and 21 are the business type activities, so sewer, landfill, water. And then beginning on page 70 is a budgetary statement where you can see the original budget, the final budget, and the actual results, and take a look at those. So just in case you're prioritizing pages in the 100-page document, you can take a few key notes from those. We'll go through the presentation that is in front of you that we passed out copies of. If anyone has any questions at any point, please feel free to jump in and ask those. And our contact information is on the last page of that presentation. So if after this presentation, as you're looking through the drafts, you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And also at any point of the year, throughout the year, we're happy to answer questions as well. Beginning on the first slide, really what the products of our audit are, what the deliverables are. The first and foremost, the reason that we're hired is to issue an opinion on your basic financial statements. These are in draft form, so the version that Kitty sent you is a draft. It has not been issued or completed at this point yet. However, we do anticipate moving forward with what is referred to as an unmodified opinion. That is a clean opinion. That is the best that you can do in an external audit. There are no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, no compliance findings. So again, checking all those boxes of things you want to happen in your audit, you did achieve all of those. We also issue an opinion on the single audit financial statements. We act as an agent of the federal government to perform certain compliance procedures over your federal spending during the year. There is a rotation that we go through and kind of a determination of what programs we'll test each year, so that each year there is a rotation and we're not looking at the same programs. This year we did test 6 certain federal award programs. Those were the Highway Planning and Construction Program, the Medical Assistance Program, American Rescue Plan Act, your formula grants for rural areas, HEAP, and adoption assistance. And again, we did not find any issues, no compliance findings as a result of our testing of those programs. We also issue what is referred to as a management letter. This is just an opportunity for us to discuss certain best practices, future accounting pronouncements that may impact the financial statements or your financial reporting. That's also in draft form. We're working with management now to just finalize some of those comments, and we will have a draft available before issuance of that. We also issue an auditor communication letter. I'll go through that in more detail in the next slide. That's a required communication of every audit we perform. And then there are certain other deliverables that we perform for the county. We issue a New York State Department of Transportation audit. We do a review of the mental health CFR certified financial report. We issue an agreed upon procedures report regarding the Roberts Road, and we also issue an agreed upon procedures regarding the landfill. Those will also be issued in final form at the conclusion of the audit. Moving on to slide 2, as I mentioned, we issue an auditor communication letter. This is a required communication that we have on an annual basis. This is familiar to you if you've been here in prior years, which you have. No significant changes within this letter. Our responsibility under generally accepted auditing standards is to provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements are without material misstatement. So we receive all of the information that is in this 100-page document from finance and from the county, and then we perform procedures over those numbers. So we don't actually take ownership over anything except the opinion in this document. Significant accounting policies. If there were any significant changes year over year, we would discuss those here. The county was required to implement a new governmental accounting standards board statement. This was statement number 96. All entities that follow GASB were required to implement this. This does not have any impact on your day-to-day accounting. It does not have any impact on your fund balance, but essentially what it did was require the county to evaluate its subscription assets. So any subscriptions exceeding 1 year have to be included within the financial statements on the long-term basis. So again, it does not impact your actual fund statements, but it was a requirement. So if you're looking in much detail in those financial statements, you may see reference to subscription assets and leases this year. Significant accounting estimates. Our responsibility for the estimates in the financial statements is to review the inputs that were used to develop the estimates, and we were able to conclude that all of the estimates are reasonable. Those include the allowance for doubtful receivables, your retiree health benefits through your other post-employment benefits, compensated absences, which is sick and vacation leave, your workers' compensation liability, health insurance liability, the net pension liability, which is derived from New York State, and also the landfill liability. Most important of an external auditor is our independence to the county. Everyone from our firm that worked on the audit has signed off as being independent from the county, so no issues there. And then other matters, had there been any scope limitations, had any department that said we couldn't look at something, had we had any disagreements, we would communicate those to you. None of that occurred. We had full cooperation of everyone that we came in contact with, and we asked a lot of questions and we got all our responses back. So we thank everyone that we came in contact with for making the audit process run smoothly. Moving on to some of the financial results for the year. We'll go through the general fund, the county road fund, and the road machinery fund, a few different slides for each of those. Beginning with the general fund, this is a 5-year trend of the revenues and other financing sources versus expenditures and other financing uses. The blue line, your total revenues this year increased to $288.6 million. That was an increase of about $12.4 million compared to the prior year. A big reason for that increase was state and federal aid. Those increased significantly. A large amount of that was the recognition of the American Rescue Plan funds. That increased by about $6 million in 2023. There was also the benefit of interest rates this year. So your use of money line on the financial statements increased by about $5 million compared to the prior year. Some sales tax increases as well, which we've seen. That was about a $3.7 million increase over the prior year. On the expenditure side of things, that red line, expenditures did increase as well to $286.1 million. That was about a $28.9 million increase. A lot of that ties directly to the additional state and federal aid that was received. So economic assistance and opportunity had about a $9 million increase directly tied to those federal and state revenues. And then health had about a $4.2 million increase compared to the prior year, and public safety about $3.4 million. Again, once you take a little bit of a closer look at those financial statements that were sent in the budgetary schedule, you can see that they did fall under budget, all of your expenditure lines, so in compliance with the final budgets. All of that to say that fund balance in the general fund, if you flip to the next slide, did increase. There was an increase of about $2.5 million, bringing general fund total fund balance to $64,818,000. This slide shows the increases over the last 5 years. In 2019, total fund balance was about $29.2 million compared to, again, where we're at this year at the end of December 31st, 2023, $64.8 million. That red section, $18.2 million, represents fund balance that is tied up for different reasons. So non-spendable fund balance, that's your prepaid balances, inventory, loans receivable, certain assets that can't be touched. Restricted fund balance, those are legal restrictions. Those include some of the bigger items, capital projects restrictions, There is insurance restrictions, the opioid settlement money falls into that pot as well, about $1.3 million. And then assigned fund balance, which is that earmarked fund balance, not legally restricted, but that also falls into the red section. Within there, the major portion is the budgetary appropriations for the 2024 budget of about $4.5 million. There's also purchase orders there that are outstanding at year end that are carried forward into the next year that fall within that red category. That leaves $46.6 million in the unassigned fund balance at December 31st, 2023. That represents 16.3% of the current year expenditures. I know Kitty will be talking and presenting to you a little bit later the financial management policy, so just taking a look at that number, if it's where you're comfortable at. I know your policy is written on a revenue basis rather than an expenditure basis, but just for your information, that 16.3 is based on the expenditure basis. We'll move on to the county road fund next. The same graphs for the county road fund. Total expenditures this year exceeded total revenues. Expenditures amounted to $27.6 million. That was an increase of about $2.2 million just due to the nature of the fund, capital projects, new construction funded by state and federal aid. On the revenue side of things, revenues amounted to $26.8 million. Again, state and federal aid had slight increases, and this fund also had the benefit of those interest earnings, about $980,000 higher than the prior years for interest earnings. The county road fund did see, again, that decrease in overall fund balance, about $813,000 decrease. If you flip to the next slide, you'll see that graph here of county road fund balance. Total fund balance at December 31st in this fund was $5.6 million, a decrease from $6.4 million in the prior year. Similar to the general fund, that blue section represents your available fund balance. That is $778,000 at year end versus the red section, which are those fund balances that have been tied up for other purposes. Within there, the large portion of that is permit revenue from the solar farms that ended up being about $3.8 million and makes up a big portion of that red section of this graph. And then the last fund that we look at here, the road machinery fund. The blue line, your revenues and other financing sources, increased about $1.1 million to $6.1 million. There were additional transfers in to support this fund from the general fund, along with interest earnings to account for the increase in revenues. On the expenditure side, expenditures totaled $5.5 million. A lot of that increase was due to debt service costs that had increased from the prior year. And also there were actual decreases in some of the transportation costs associated with fuel costs. So some savings there. However, those were offset by debt service increases. The total fund balance in this fund increased $566,000 to bring total fund balance in the road machinery fund to just over $1 million, $1,014,000. The next slide has that 5-year trend of those fund balances and where they have been at. Similar to the previous two funds that we've looked at, the blue section represents that available fund balance, $312,000, versus the red section, your fund balances that have been assigned or restricted or are considered to be non-spendable. Within there, similar to the other funds, are some of those inventory items, prepaid items, and then purchase orders within that red section that are tied up and not available for spending at year end. We do also perform audit procedures over the business type activities, so your water, sewer, water, landfill, and electric. We don't have slides on those, but again, those are on pages 20 and 21 of your financial statements. Pretty favorable year for all of those funds. Just briefly, I'll go over the changes in net position in those funds. Sewer fund had a $4.1 million increase to net position. water 1.1, landfill 2.6, and electric $235,000. So a favorable year there. That concludes the formal portion of our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions now or clarify anything. I know a lot of numbers get thrown around, so we can help if there are any concerns or questions.
Committee, any questions that anyone has for the auditors?
I've got one, Dan.
Sure.
Erica and Jared, will your external audit have any effect on the county's bond rating, or could it have?
You want to go
if it was really poor, if we actually had like an adverse opinion,
But-
that would be, but we don't have
But
anything
this
like
is a
that.
good one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
No change.
yeah, we've had clients where we've issued either like extremely late because they couldn't get us records, and that's impacted it actually decreased their bond rating.
Okay, but this, you think this should help our bond rating for
Yeah, it's,
next year?
It's at the very least, it's a box they check. Have you had an audit done on time? And then they go on to the next thing. I think.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Sure.
What's the difference, just private sector guy, between GAAP and GAS? Generally accepted accounting principles, generally accepted accounting standards, same thing? One's public sector, one's private?
So GAS is auditing standards. So
Okay.
those are the, like, the standards that we use for performing our procedures. GAAP is the procedures that the finance
use.
department use to create the financial statements.
Okay.
Erica, I appreciate you pointing out that all of our enterprise funds had a very favorable year. All of them saw their net position increase
Yes.
last year. Our enterprise funds don't get the same level of scrutiny, had not in the past gotten the same level of scrutiny. We've been paying more attention to them the last few years, and it's very rewarding to see that all of them had a very favorable year.
Yes, definitely.
What if I always think of those things that come up after the point. We have the point of our internal staff we feel do a really wonderful job, and we always like to double check things, and that's great. And so we appreciate the outside agency to come in and do the audit, because sometimes mistakes can be made.
Sure.
And I think even in the past, the secondary audit has missed things.
Sure.
Because it happens, and then you say, well, we've seen it and we've corrected it.
Sure.
So hopefully, neither of us have missed
Yeah.
anything, and the fine report is
Yeah.
warranted.
Yeah,
And,
you'll never hear us say something is correct or right, or we like reasonable, no material misstatements, things like that, because we don't test 100% of the transactions, so we're doing it on a sample basis. So
Yeah.
that can occur just by the nature of the volume of activity that runs through the county.
And that's an important aspect of it, is a sample basis, because there's areas that you can't look at everything with a fine-tooth comb.
Right.
You do samples, and if you say, well, boy, we did find something here,
Sure.
and then you can compare that with other departments and
Right.
say, well, this is something.
Yeah, so our typical procedures when we come in are to do internal control reviews before we start testing anything. So we have conversations, we write narratives about how things should be working. And if in those internal control reviews, something stands out that we think needs more attention, then when we actually start testing the numbers, we can dig into those a little bit more. But even before we see numbers, we can do a lot of our testing.
Good.
Yeah.
Questions, comments?
In your 100-page document, is there a place where we can see the source of revenues, like taxes, grants, interest,
Yes.
revenues?
Yep, so that would be on page 18,
18, okay.
has the actual amounts for each of the funds. And then beginning on page 70, also compares it to the budget amounts, so it has the actuals compared to the budgets.
All right, so we can see the evolution of how grants have done versus taxes versus.
Yes.
Great.
Yep.
Any other questions? Well, thank you for taking the opportunity to come in and
Sure,
present
thank
to
you for
us
having
today.
us.
It's a function that the Audit Control Committee needs to do, is to
Mhm.
review the audit that's being done and also have the audit completed. So
Yep.
thank you for coming in and presenting. So,
Definitely. Yeah, and again, like I said, our contact information is there. Please reach out to us at any point with questions you may have. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Next item for discussion is, come on up.
Maybe we should take a break.
Couple of handouts, so just bear with me a second. Just 'cause you asked here.
Thanks, Kate.
These are color.
No color today.
That's good, those coloring check-ins are expensive.
Thanks.
Sorry, you don't get any.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, you don't get any.
There it is.
Okay, just Kitty Crow, Director of Finance. Just as a kind of a follow-up on the financial statements, I just want to recognize Todd for all his work. It's his thing from December till April. Works roughly 7 days a week during that time period, so it's a big effort on his part. And having another clean audit, I think, deserves recognition. Thanks, Todd. Additionally, now that our figures are final, so to speak, I'll just finalize our 5-year projections, which includes our fund balance statement, but nothing really changed material since we presented to you. I guess maybe it was in March what our material variances were, but I'll just get that ready for finalization and get that out to you. All right, so I did want to talk about the financial management policy, which is a requirement to be reviewed and adopted annually. I think last year we discussed it, I believe, but there were no changes, so there wasn't another resolution. So the last resolution with any changes was in 2022. So that's the copy that you have out in front of you. The main thing I wanted to focus on was just a discussion on some potential changes regarding fund balance. And so on page 2 of the financial management policy, this paragraph C there, the last sentence of that, I just wanted to review a couple of things here. So this policy is to ensure the county maintains adequate fund balance and reserves in the county's governmental funds to provide for sufficient cash flow for our daily needs, secure and maintain investment grade bond rating, which I have a handout on that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, and provide adequate reserves to offset economic downturns or revenue shortfalls. That might be something that, change in the economy related to sales tax, or something that impacts our property tax collections, and or any other trend. I know some of you may have heard yesterday regarding, our current trends with safety net. Those are very difficult to project. So having a sufficient fund balance helps us to be able to weather those storms, so to speak. And to provide adequate reserves for unforeseen expenses related to emergencies. We know we live in a climate where we can have bad storms in the winter, sometimes bad flooding in the summers, and so that does impact our roads sometimes, and we might need repairs that were unexpected. So just kind of giving that overview of why a healthy fund balance is beneficial. So now on the next page, there's a couple of sections here, and what I've done is, I have fund balance policies from, roughly 10 other counties that I, reviewed, and for the most part, all of our their policies are very, comparable to ours. The main points is some of the statements are kind of routine in each of the, policies, but as Erica presented in their presentation, they showed our fund balance as a percentage of expenditures, and 10 out of 10 counties that I looked at do the same. Now, it's probably roughly the same because generally speaking, our expense and revenue are going to balance, so it's probably not much different, but that could be one consideration for a change to our policy, is to measure based on a percentage of appropriations. Some of the counties specifically reference that, in doing that, it's taking maybe 2 to 3 months of expenditures. That's what the equivalent is in terms of the percentage that they use in their policies. In reviewing those 10 policies, the range in terms of the low and high end ranges from, there was, 2 of those 8 counties on the low end was 5% of appropriations. Most of them were in the, maybe 15% range. One was as high as 25% of appropriation. So
Cattaraugus, Kitty?
that wasn't Cat County, no.
No?
But
Is there any state recommendation
no,
of whether you
that
do
the
it by-
comptroller won't say what, like it has to be X or Y.
So it's a preference of how you want to look at it, and I suppose it does have an effect. If you base it on a revenue or an expenditure, they vary every year. You may spend more money than you take in, or more money.
There's a difference.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
difference.
yeah, and their revenues too, so those will fluctuate a little bit, but, in any case, those just something to consider. The other, one policy I noticed recommended a target within the range, so we have a range of 5 to 15% right now of revenues, so, maybe you might want to consider, and what I can do today is I'll summarize maybe some recommendations that I have, for your consideration, with the idea that for August, we would pre-file, the proposed changes. So, one of them that had I think they had a 5 to 15% range, but their target was 12.5%. So I don't know if that's important for us or not. There was only one county that had that language in there. Some of the other counties had a fund balance policy for their other funds as well. So they had a fund balance policy for their road and road machinery funds. So that's our D&DM funds, as well as the landfill fund or the self-insurance health fund. So that's also, I think that might be beneficial for us, because there does, sometimes there are questions like I've been asked over time, if we're utilizing D or DM fund balance, well, how much should we have in the D, or keep in the D or DM fund balance? So I think, and again, this is a policy, it's a recommendation, it's not like we can't ever, fluctuate, but I think it might be helpful for us to consider having a policy with respect to the other funds. Then if you look at our policy on that page 3, kind of about a third of the way down, it talks about, or it says the director of financial report the amount, blah, 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 in the event that the unobligated fund balance exceeds 15%. It lists out a couple of things that we already have in our policy, that should be acted upon. So we have, such use as for one-time expenditures, or to be used to establish or increase reserves. So ours is a little bit brief. A lot of other counties had a few more specifics as to how fund balance could be used and or utilized if it exceeds the threshold that is on their policy. So one additional item could be to pay down debt for, some debt is not, you can't pay down early, but some you can. So where we could use surplus to pay down debt. Some was, had a language regarding, could be used for startup expenses of a new program.
What is their current rate based on revenue?
Percentage.
Right
Percentage,
now,
yeah.
we're at, I think it was like 16.2 or 16.3 as a percentage of revenues.
As revenue.
Yeah,
So we're over now.
correct. Yeah.
At this point in time.
And that's kind of why it kind of, it sparked the thought that maybe we kind of talk about a little bit more, because we've never been over that. We've always unfortunately been so far on the low end that
Toward
it
the
never was.
5%.
But I think it is responsible to, if we're exceeding our threshold, that we've set for ourselves, what are we going to do? So I think just further delineating in our policy the things that we want to prioritize as things we would do with, that excess to get us back into the range that we want would be helpful. So again, the two things that were, in a few other policies did include like to reduce, liabilities, long-term liabilities of the county and including, paying down debt, or to not. So right now we have some capital projects of which the budgets, last year and this year proposed funding with serial bonds. So it could be that we would look at not issuing additional bonds. We would utilize some fund balance first if that was appropriate. So, and then one county had some language regarding the maximum amount used in a given year. So even though you might be within the range or a little bit over the range, they had language in there that, only so much of it would be used in a given year. So, for example, we wouldn't want to use all of it in our range in one year. We want to, safeguard it for other years as well. So that might be something for us to think about. Maybe that's not something we implement right away, but just to kind of have further discussion on if that's something we want to build into our language. Let's see. Those were the main things I wanted to bring to your attention, and I'm happy to forward the other examples to you. Like I said, there were 10 other counties from a range of it was Madison, Ontario, Albany County, St. Lawrence County, Cortland, Broome. So it was from a range of counties of different sizes, Erie County. So if you're interested, I can send them to you.
You said 10?
10, yeah. But again, like I said, that I just kind of highlighted the main themes. A lot of them had very, almost identical language to ours for the most part. So the items that I called out were the things that were a little bit different than ours. So I can summarize some of the things I just talked about, send you the other examples, and then, if you, I don't know if Dan, if you would want to get back to me so that I'm happy to prepare a proposed resolution for August, but if we need to have a second discussion next month and pre-file for September, that's fine as well.
So at the end of the day, I think, we're just discussing what the other options are to help spend down the overage, if you will, if we have an over our percentage, allowable percentage. And right now, the way it reads is there's a few suggestions, but it's also open. We could spend it on a multitude of things.
Correct. I wouldn't want to restrict ourselves too much, but I think if there's items that we want to prioritize, and it's not to say you have to do all those things, it's just those might be the choices to prioritize the use of, additional
balance.
Sure, and I guess it's up to the committee. I can ask that. Does anyone have a specific, do they feel the need to have the more specific areas of a prioritized list? Or do you want to reserve that right to select it at the time? I guess at the time, we sometimes don't know what those areas could be. So, any other input?
Well, then we could have, I guess, a suggested priority list.
And that's what you're proposing, right? Is
just
kind of
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not even, I'm not trying to be as specific as to say these are priority 1, 2, and 3. It's just,
Exactly.
the language is very similar, in these other things, and it just says, the same way, may be used for, or some of them, says options for utilizing the excess, including but not limited to the following: funding of any allowable restricted funds, funding the accrued liabilities, the funding of debt, the funding of authorized and unissued debt, and covering one-time expenditures. So it's very similar language. It's not binding, but it just adds a few other things in here that are not.
Then we could have something like that possible options for
Sure.
utilization of the excess funds.
So I think in this, in order, it is vague, and I think also when we're discussing the use of unassigned fund balance, sometimes, I think it's okay that we can revert back to a policy and say this is a response, or this is it's within the policy, and it's what we intend to use the money for. And so I think it's okay to be a tool to help justify the use of it. I think that putting in some other potential uses is okay. I think looking back at some prior history of what we've utilized the unassigned fund balance for, would be an area to look to say, yeah, well, we could implement some of those into that category. One of them that is coming to mind is our lake expenses.
So there was another item, some other language in a couple of the policies too. So it also spelled out what fund balance should not be used for, and it did. I don't think ours specifies, but the language in a couple of the resolution was that fund balance should not normally be used to fund recurring annual operating expenses, and that's really fundamental, I think.
That's in our policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we want to be sure that is provided for as well. So. So again, I'm happy to kind of summarize some of the main points for your consideration. And I guess the other question is if you are interested in changing hours to be a percentage of appropriations versus revenue.
So I think on behalf of on the use of the percentage, that if it is over, I think a few more things in there would be okay. A few more recommendations of potentials. Options. And also, I think a vague statement in the sense that at the time of that overage, these options may be selected, or if there is another area that is in need, the legislature at the time can choose to use that avenue as well. So that way it's kind of a vague statement that.
Yeah, I mean, it does already say in our policy can be utilized for any lawful purpose, so. Yeah,
and there you go.
Covers a
so
lot,
that,
a lot of things.
There it is.
Yes.
So one of the things I have not heard, not that it's not there, but I have not heard is if the fund balance got too big, it leads to a reduction in taxes.
Well, that would, if it's a reduction in taxes, then I would argue that would generally be, reducing taxes is then funding operating expenses is what you don't want to do. So But there are one-time expenses sometimes proposed in any annual budget, so anytime, you know, that we do propose a use of fund balance in the tentative budget, it is generally for items that we consider to be one-time expenses. Now, sure, that does reduce the taxes for that year because you're funding it with fund balance, that one-time expense, rather than raising taxes for that one-time expense.
Yeah, but that's
But
avoiding a
we-
raise rather than reducing
We don't-
an actual.
We don't want to use fund balance for recurring expenses because at some point fund balance would just be gone. And it's like not using your savings account to pay for your mortgage. You want to have income coming in to be paying for a mortgage. So it's a similar concept, but,
Yeah, but we're talking about the excess over 15%.
correct. But then in the next county budget that we would be doing, we would have a gap because we would have used fund balance to fund something in the budget that we're gonna, if we have that recurring expense next year, now our fund balance is in range, how are we gonna make up that difference? And that's, you
No,
know,
you don't wanna get there, but.
Yeah.
But assuming you don't get there, reducing taxes should be on the table.
I think that, you know, like, for example, paying down debt, that is indirectly going to reduce the operating expenses. So, because then if that reduces our debt service payment in a budget year, that's gonna have a
Help you
direct
further.
impact on the levy.
And also, you know, those, fund balance, you know, in our years, we talk about capital projects, you know, and even a little bit ago, we discussed, the building upgrades and, things that really not necessarily are in the purview at all in the sense of a capital plan, but we have some, thoughts and ideas of some, building improvements, and those are sort of things that are like a one-time expense that could be utilized for, where
Certainly, yeah.
you know, we do have kind of a wish list item for this building, so I think
Yeah, those are the kinds of things that I would
Yeah.
focus on too, even whether we're in excess of our range or not. I mean, when we propose the use of fund balance, I mean, we always have more capital projects than our investment earnings are going to cover. So, utilizing fund balance for those capital projects is, I think, a good thing because we need most of those projects, and if we don't have to raise taxes, you know, in a future year for that, and we can utilize, I mean, the fund balance does come from surplus, in
Property
prior
taxes.
years, well, not surplus property tax, but, I mean, but
In
it is,
part,
yes,
getting
indirect,
and
yeah,
sales
so,
tax and
yeah,
everything
so
else.
any
It's a
time that we have either
formulation. Yeah.
surplus revenue or we have underspending, that results in an increase to fund balance, so, yes, so that's reinvesting the fund balance into our capital needs, and,
And Kitty, that's a good point. But I think I tend to agree with Fred in part. One of the reasons we have this excess is because we've had increases in property taxes, other things too, sales tax and everything else. But I think in the past, I think we have used some of the fund balance to reduce taxes. Over the
yeah,
years.
like maybe in 2012, those years and that's what led to us having a
Below 5%.
depleting our
Okay.
sales, our fund balance significantly in those years because we did utilize fund balance for recurring expenses, and it's not sustainable.
Sorry, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is, subject to good conservative budgeting and financial management, the financial resources of the county government belong to the taxpayers first and the county government second.
Correct.
And so when we have a surplus, if we're going to go nice to haves versus giving tax dollars back, we need to consider that. But so, you know, sometimes you hear other branches of government, let's not pick on the county, talking about things that should be taxed as if those are the property of the government branch in question. And again, fundamentally, the money that is in the county coffers belongs to the taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, subject to good conservative financial management.
Because I was here and so was Bob. I remember when the fund balance was below 5%.
Like $5
and now-
million.
Well, yeah, and a lot below 5%, I think. So now we're up to, what'd you say, 16.2%? That's pretty high, Kitty. So, I'm not in favor of taking any more from the county taxpayers and from their or increasing their property taxes any more than we absolutely have to.
I agree, yeah. But, well, just as an example for next year, the property tax cap limit for the tax levy is $1.7 million. That's to stay under the 2%, we can only increase total county levy by $1.7 million. So that's not very much.
Yeah, that's true, but.
And we've stayed, except for 1 year during COVID, we have always stayed below the tax cap. And our allowable increase has not usually been much more than that in a given year. So in terms of the levy increase each year, it's always been within the tax cap since it was implemented.
That's good. Yeah, but it's just a philosophical, who's on first kind of
Yeah.
discussion.
I enjoy the criticism of the fund balance, whether if it's too low, it's criticized, and if it's too high, it's criticized. So maybe we should have a targeted fund balance, just to narrow the.
That's the 15, isn't it?
Well, no, she suggested a
No,
range
to
within
be-
that range.
To be
5
within
and
the 5 to 15,
So.
like you mentioned, somebody was at 12 and a half.
One of
Yeah,
those
and
other counties.
that's I know the county
Yeah.
executive has a
So
comment.
to that point, we usually, when we look at our budget, we usually will spend to about 12. I don't like 13, I don't like the unlucky number, but we're usually but right around 12, 12 and a half is where we try to maintain that. So that, as we prepare our budget, that is something that I consider and discuss with Kitty and Jennifer and everyone.
Yeah.
And again, looking into now, as Kitty brought this up to us, brought this up to me in our meetings, now it's a matter of, okay, how do we look at this going forward in our budgeting process? We don't want to get into that balance, that belief of an structurally imbalanced budget by using that fund balance to reduce, but then we need to look at things going forward. And again, to Fred's point, as those taxpayer dollars, investing in those one-time purchases, we wouldn't otherwise be able to, provide. So, again, philosophically, how do you look at, reduce taxes? Obviously, our trend has been, tax rate reduction for the last, 3 solid years, 4 years that I presented, but you can't keep reducing taxes. I mean, we've gone down $1.51 since, or roughly about $1.50 since I've taken office. So, 5% increase, let's say we go 5 cents, what's gonna be all over the papers? County increases tax. We're still at a rate that's,
Right.
going back to the 1980s. But, so those are things that we're cognizant of every time, and trust me, Kitty and Jen know when we sit in these meetings, it's, all those things play into discussion.
It's a good position to be in, is having the excess fund
Right.
balance. It's also, it's important as a legislature, as a county employees and other elected officials to find ways to utilize that fund balance the best that we can. And that's simply what we're discussing here, is how we're gonna spend that down. There's certainly ways that we can, spend it in a promoting way that's within our policy, and it's important that we spend the money. It's sitting around does us no good either, so we need to use it, and we need to spend it.
It's always a good problem, though, to lower taxes 83 cents and have near record fund balance. I mean, it's a good problem.
By using the funds is in sense, is saving the taxpayers money down the road. Whether we're using that funds now to buy get ahead a little on a piece of equipment. It's saving us for next year from raising the money by the tax roll. So we, instead of facing a increase next year for buying an extra bulldozer, we've already bought it with our fund balance. We aren't raising it next year. You know, so that's the way we are gonna save it on the tax roll, is by getting ahead a little on something and being fiscally responsible with the money that we do have, but by looking into the, you know, potential that we could get ahead. And that's why I suggest even, you know, PJ had suggested that there was some improvements with the building. Put the plan forward. Let's see it. Get the project moving, right? That's what we have the money. Let's spend it. So,
I've always
in a
hated
good
the
project.
term, sorry, deferred maintenance. You know, I translate that as premeditated neglect.
Good point.
So again, I'm happy to summarize the points that I presented today. I could draft that in the form of a, you know, something you could pre-file, or if you'd just rather have a further discussion next month and pre-file something for September. Do you have a sense of which way you want to go?
So I would say if you put something together, let us have the opportunity to look at it and make any suggestions or comments or changes. If we're all okay with it, then do you want to have it as a discussion item next month, then put it toward a resolution, or would you want to just do it by email? Kitty can put something together. We can all have the opportunity to comment on it at that time, and then it can just be filed for next month. Any recommendation from anyone or preference? Put it together. We'll have it as a resolution next month, and
then you could always
we can
amend in
comment it,
committee,
amend
yeah.
it.
We
So,
can change it.
Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
So put it together, and we'll make that
Okay, yes.
adjustment if we don't like it.
Sounds good. I mean, and along with this, I did pass out one of our rating reports. That was from a couple years ago, but our rating has stayed the same. But I only printed it out for you just so you can see, and when they do rate us, they do look at what our fund balance is as part of their review. So it is important to our bond rating.
Which is A1.
Mm-hmm. Well, like S&P and Moody's have different scales, but they're equivalent on each one, but depending on who is the rating agency when we issue the bonds, they'll, but then they annually review and restate whatever our rating is.
Yeah, and this
they
has
seem-
been the this has been the same, Kitty, for the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, we issued bonds last in 2022, and I was hoping it would go up a little bit because our financial position was good. But
Yeah.
our fiscal advisors said they really like to see about 3 or 4 more years of the consistent, improvement before they really bump you up. So we do have to issue bonds later this year. So we'll see what they.
Okay, so this is
But we-
A1. We're looking to maybe double A, possibly, hopefully.
Any improvement will make me happy, but I do have a comparison chart from 2021, to other counties, and we're better than some, and there's a few that are a little better than us. So
Okay.
Okay.
all right.
We've covered the financial management policy,
Mm-hmm.
investment portfolio update.
I'll be brief. Won't take.
Yeah,
too-
no, I think that's. Okay.
I think we took them out of order. We should redo that first one after we do this. Yeah.
Fred's got 2. Thank you.
We took them out of order. We should redo.
She was leading on that. She started. She.
And just as a reminder, for the minutes, the minutes when we discuss the investment policy need to, be included in the minutes, not. Okay, so I haven't sent out the latest, report, but the most updated one, on the bottom row of the first page here was April. So that just shows our earnings, by month. In the first section there are long-term investments. The second is our short-term investments. And then, we've segregated out ARPA investments just so, since we have those funds in a separate account. As a reminder, in our long-term earnings, that reflects the change in market value. That's how we're required to report the investment earnings. So they look at, we get the report monthly, and it shows what the value, current value of all the assets are. And so I don't want, you shouldn't be alarmed that you see a loss of $609,000 in April, because that's just the current market value. If we were going to liquidate the entire portfolio today, we would be selling at a loss, but we're not going to do that. We're going to hold our investments until maturity, so we will get the full interest due once they mature. Some of them pay down monthly, but we're not selling them for liquidity. So the things that we invest in our long-term investments are liquidity that we don't need today, or even this year, or maybe even next year that we don't need it. So we want to invest those funds so we're maximizing our returns until we need that cash. So with short-term earnings, those are generally, a money market or CD, or, are in an investment pool like the New York Muni Trust. So those earnings have been pretty good the last couple of years, especially. Those rates have just been higher than the money markets we used to put funds in for our current year earnings. But that grows from the beginning of the year, because as we're bringing in cash receipts from the taxes, that's the money that is our funds, our operating cash for the year. So we put them, have been right now, into a investment pool. That's where we're getting the best rate currently. And then the ARPA funds are also invested in that same pool. The second page there, so like I said, this represents, really the change in market value for our long term, but this gives you a better picture of our actual investment payments. So this is actually cash coming in on interest payments. So our year to date, we've been trending pretty well, through April of this year on our longer term investments, which are up over the same period last year. We really have been working hard to take advantage of the current rates over the last couple, year or so. Even this year, what we did is normally we will reinvest only on a monthly basis, but because we had enough cash at the beginning of this year, and knowing rates are likely to go down, maybe not as fast as we originally thought this year, but they're not going to go up from where they are right now. So we're trying to lock in as much as we can at that 4% and 5% rates. So we kind of invested already what we normally would have reinvested on a monthly basis through the end of the year, just to lock those rates in, because next year, if we're even in December, if we are reinvesting, we might not be getting the rate that we're getting today. So we've been working hard to kind of protect ourselves from when the rates start to go down. For ARPA earnings, through April, we're at $123,000. So again, that will start to trend down just because we're continuing to spend down the ARPA funds, so there's less funds to earn interest on. So that number will continue to decrease, but we're still earning on any of the ARPA funds that we're still holding on to until we spend on the various projects. And lastly, this is just our latest scorecard from 3+1. They're our liquidity partners, so they review on a quarterly basis with us. Mainly, their ratings are looking at things like are we investing all of our funds, maximizing and making sure that we're not just holding on to cash in a low interest account when they could be locked up for a longer duration, perhaps at a higher rate. So they help us to understand like how much cash we need to have on hand in a 6-month period, a 12-month period, an 18-month period. So that gives us a better understanding of where we can invest those funds, whether long-term or short-term. So as you can see, we've maintained a high score for several quarters now. So that's just telling you that we are maximizing, making sure all of our cash is invested in a way it can be to earn interest for the county. So I'm happy to, and this report here is like a 40-page report. I can send it to you just so it kind of gets into more of the detail, but this kind of just summarizes the big picture there. So, any questions on?
I'm sure it's a balance of deciding where to put something and also looking at the past trends. You know, as you look through the long-term investments and the percentage rate that you receive throughout, and then take the yearly average and you compare it to the short-term investments, and you say, well, how can you balance that? And geez, if you just knew when the highs and lows would be, but you know,
Yeah.
it's there's never a complete exact science to
Uh-huh.
that. And so no, I think that overall it's a job well done, and we applaud the efforts of the department to make sure we're utilizing the funds the best we can and have them where we need them. Reading from the score that we've been receiving is evident of that good work. So, questions,
you.
comments?
What's an example of or what's our portfolio of long-term investments look like in terms of bonds or?
So
funds?
the county, as a county in New York State, we have, there are specific investments that the state allows us to purchase, so generally only bonds.
Okay, what's our average duration?
We try to maintain a duration between 3 and 5 years.
Okay.
And, you know, we kind of try to be, you know, on the shorter end or longer end, depending on, you know, where rates are, where they're projected to go.
Fair enough.
Any other questions or comments?
Good job, Kenny.
And
Very nice.
And
Todd also does a lot of work on our investments as well, so we work well together on that.
Good job, Todd.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
99, that's a good score.
Well, we can do better.
All right.
So we're on to other. I do have a item to bring up under other. There's an emergency resolution,
Still late resolution.
late resolution that I'd like to bring up under other.
Thank you, County Executive Wendell. What you see before you is a resolution coming forward to the Audit and Control Committee asking for the legislature to request an investigation of the budgetary process of the city of Dunkirk and any financial documents for the last 10 years, 2014 through 2024. Myself and the chairman have received we've had different meetings with leadership in the city of Dunkirk. Leadership of the legislature has met with leadership in Dunkirk. We most recently had another request for purchasing a RAN, revenue anticipation note, by the county. But at the end of the day, we just need to make sure that if there's any engagement from the county, we need to know exactly what has happened, how did they get to this position. There's an estimated, again, the first whereas an estimation, an estimated deficit of $16 million. So how does one get into a position where you're $16 million in debt? So that's a question we have. It's just simply asking the legislature to approve a request to the office of the State Attorney General's office to investigate the budget process and audit the applicable financial documents for the city of Dunkirk from the years 2014 through 2024.
Thank you. Questions, comments related to this resolution?
Dan, just one.
Please.
PJ, so we've talked to the controller's office and no response.
Correct, yes, at this point.
And this has been going on for a while?
It was first brought to my attention in March, and we started having meetings with city leadership. If you remember, this really actually goes back to the tail end of, actually the beginning of 2024, when we discussed the marina project, to where this first started to come to light. I think more officially, it came out in March. And
okay.
So when you say estimated deficit of 16, is that an annual deficit? Is that, or is that negative equity, or what?
That's a current.
Right now, currently, their deficit is $16 million.
So in a year's time, they'll spend 16 million more than they're bringing in? Just what do we mean by deficit?
That's the other point, exactly. So at the present time, right now, in this year's current operating budget, as I understand, there's a $2 million deficit in the current operating budget, which I don't believe is included in this 16 million, but we don't know. There has been no formal, there's an assembly bill passed and bills in committee right now for the state comptroller to have the oversight, but we don't know. They have to finalize the debt, so we're not exactly sure what that total number is. Official debt, I think is how it's termed.
So the operating deficit, roughly 2 million per year, and that is built up to a negative equity of 16, roughly.
As we,
definition of
yeah,
deficit.
exactly.
And that number might not be
Possibly.
equally 2 million a year. It could have been 4 million last year, or 8 in 1 year.
Yeah.
We do. It just, that's the question at hand. We need to, something needs to be looked at and explained to. It's us, but it's it's taxpayers in the county. This will definitely impact the city of Dunkirk and their taxpayers, as it already has been requested from the county to assist.
PJ, so they've asked for us to assist. Can you just be a little more?
Well, it's been very general, very
them?
general. For example, one of the meetings we had is, how can the county help us?
That's my question.
That's right. But it was a very general statement. They're looking at it.
General.
Yeah, and that's the hard part is without them here to defend, the statement. We want to keep it at that. As just, there was no specifics. There was a specific number that was reached out, but that was not from anyone. That was not the mayor or city council that came to the county. It came to us via another source. Asked if we were interested in purchasing a revenue anticipation note for the city of Dunkirk. So again, questions have been asked, what can the county do? Very general. They're looking at several things involving streetlights, roads, plowing, police, fire, those types of other, services. So, they did. But again, I don't want to go too far without having the city,
Right.
leadership here. But this isn't anything. It's been publicized as to where they are roughly, but we haven't seen anything. So how can the county engage in assistance when we don't even know, where they are, where they're going, what plan is there, those types of things. So I think it's just, for this body to investigate, I think
So
is
what
not.
we're asking for is good practice here.
Yeah. Make sure that things are done accordingly, and starting with the Attorney General's office. If there's an investigation there, nothing to be found, then then moving on to the Comptroller's office, and again finding out what practices are there as well.
The best assistance we can give them is get the financial loss in order.
The reason we're bringing this resolution forward is, in fact, it is people and residents and taxpayers within Chautauqua County. It's the responsibility of Chautauqua County government to help and assist those individuals as best we can. We don't want to overstep or or have a overlap of governmenting authority, but we also want to patrol the best that we can, and I think it's not out of the ordinary for us to call on the Attorney General's office to investigate and also lay out the story so that all of us, the county government, and also all the residents of Chautauqua County can see what has happened. That report will be made, established, and laid out for everybody to read. It's important that we ask for it. And also, it'll help lead us into assistance if that's where we decide
It'll
to
help
go.
us to proceed, yes.
Yep. So,
And right now, as our budget season is kicking off, we just felt that right now, as we start to look at it, how would this, impact us? So we just want to make that.
any other questions, comments?
Yeah, and then if they're approaching us for assistance, we need to know how they got in the position that they have. And this resolution will help do that. So, okay.
Any other
Sounds good.
questions, comments? Go ahead.
No, so I just think sounds good too.
At the top, this is not a emergency resolution.
So it says emergency resolution late, PJ, you said late.
Right, it's just a
What-
late resolution.
So
Just cross out
Yeah, the
emergency.
only other committee that would have gone in front of was Administrative Services, and we didn't get it in time for that. So I asked the chairman if we can get this in for audit control, so therefore it would,
I think we
So
just
basically, it's
cross out.
just a resolution.
resolution, yeah.
Emergency.
So I guess, to be correct, and with of this, I guess I would ask for an amendment that we amend this resolution as it is to, instead of saying emergency, just resolution.
Can we just cross that out? Do we have to amend it?
I already did.
I would say I don't, just the.
Whatever.
I would just, guess that we could do it as a typo, but also I want to be correct with this specific one, so let's make an amendment. So would someone want to amend?
I make a motion that we amend it to just a resolution and strike out emergency.
Okay, in a second?
I'll second it.
Go ahead.
Okay, all in
Strike it out
favor?
on what-
Aye.
Aye.
Any further discussion on the amended resolution?
Now, should we strike it out with 2 lines or 1 line?
3. Okay, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else under other today? I would entertain a motion to adjourn then.
Oh, 'cause I wanna find out how we get some further.
Bob?
Oh, yeah, second. Yes, aye. Let's adjourn.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.